Behold, the central figure of our tale, Gislin Perdium. Whispers paint him as an untamable master of the blade, a recluse said to have lost his sanity, confined to his chambers, and worse yet, branded the worthless firstborn of Count Perdium. With such a grand array of titles, you'd imagine a pampered, worthless noble, right? But you would be gravely mistaken. At least, that's no longer the truth. A harsh reality his current foe is now discovered. This bearded adversary can't comprehend what he's seeing. His world crumbling as he is utterly dominated by the so-called worthless heir, Gislin. Our protagonist, however, remains terrifyingly calm amidst the chaotic fray. He feels a deep satisfaction knowing the vast sums he spent to orchestrate this perfect trap are now bearing fruit. So he taunts the bearded brute, asking if he's enjoying this turn of events. Naturally, this mockery ignites the man's fury. It's as if Gislin foresaw this entire scenario down to the last detail. And our hero, he doesn't hesitate to confirm it. He didn't just anticipate his enemy's strategy. He possessed complete knowledge from the very beginning. He knew the precise number of soldiers, the identities of the traitors, and the source of his enemy's reinforcements. Absolutely nothing was hidden from him. The bearded brute simply cannot process this. His denial erupts in a furious scream. He's enraged that his ultimate trump card had been so easily unmasked by the very man he dismissed as insignificant trash. But Gislin has had enough of this whining. He silences the man's rant with a brutal, well-placed kick to his jaw, making it crystal clear this jabbering fool can cry all he likes. Because no matter how many times they clash, Gislin is absolutely certain of his own victory. You must be questioning how he can be so confident in every battle. Well, the answer is simple. Our hero literally knows the future. Now, let's journey back in time almost a full year ago to the kingdom of Lithuania, near the Grand Perdium estate. Gislin Perdium awakens with a jolt. He is breathing, yet by all rights, he shouldn't be. He was certain he had died. The last memory Gislin possesses is being overwhelmed in a losing conflict, clashing blades with one of the continent's 7 legendary noble knights, a warrior named Aduin, the very man destined to be his executioner. But Gislin at that time was a legend in his own right. He carried the title of one of the continent's 7 great mercenary kings, a name feared across the lands, Gislin Perdium. Just before delivering the final blow, Aduin had remarked, on his surprise at finding the disgraced heir of the fallen Perdium house. From what Aduin had gathered, Gislin had abandoned his family after his sister's tragic passing, letting his once proud name vanish into obscurity. Gislin is stunned by this and demands to know how this damned knight knew so many details of his history. Aduin coolly states that he has known for a very long time. He had hunted Gislin relentlessly because he was one of the conspirators, a man who had schemed with the Delphine household to orchestrate the Perdium family's utter destruction. The phrase, one of them, catches our hero completely off guard. This implied it was not solely the Delphine household that engineered his family's ruin. There was a larger conspiracy, and a key player in that plot was standing right before him. In that instant, his hatred and desire for vengeance flared to new heights. And in that very same moment, Aduin severed his head from his shoulders. Yet when our hero next opened his eyes, he was somehow completely whole. This was impossible. His head had been cut off. Not only was there not a single wound on his body, but he also appeared significantly younger. He glances around, trying to make sense of his impossible situation. And in that very instant, a voice calls out to him, addressing him as young master, urgently telling him to emerge. This individual is a Perdium soldier named Ricardo, but the unfortunate man finds a cold blade pressed against his throat. Our hero demands that he provide answers to his questions immediately. Naturally, the soldier is completely baffled by this bizarre turn of events, so he readily agrees to answer whatever his master requires of him, though he's confused as to why his master needs to threaten him, just to ask a simple set of questions. Well, Gislin is also quite taken aback by this development. He did not anticipate this kind of loyal response from a man he perceived to be an adversary. Ricardo swiftly breaks free from his master's hold, reminding him that he had exhausted himself from a tantrum earlier and passed out. He was apparently agitated about his upcoming responsibility to command the expedition to exterminate the orcs. As you can guess, none of this is registering with our hero. The soldier tells him to gather his gear and come outside, as the men are already assembled and waiting for him. Our hero is completely lost as to their destination, to which Ricardo explains they are returning to the Perdium estate. The mention of his ancestral home completely stuns him, because from what he can recall, the Perdium estate was nothing but smoldering ruins. As they approach the territory, Ghislain takes in the view from a nearby hill, which eradicates any doubt in his mind. That is undeniably the Perdium estate, even though he has a vivid memory of seeing it burnt to the ground. Ricardo mutters quietly, wondering why our hero persists in calling his own home a fallen one, as he might be exiled if the Count were to overhear him, just like any rational person would. Ghislain pinches his own cheek to see if this is all a dream. But no, the resulting sting is all too real. So he concludes he's not dreaming. He contemplates how he now has his younger face. His ancestral home is also standing proud. And if he pieces all these facts together, it can only mean he's been sent back in time. You see, his younger self despised the household. His immaturity, born from a deep sense of inadequacy, led to constant conflict. As the years wore on, more and more members of the household began to shun him, and he could no longer bear their scorn. So he fled his home. But after several years, he forged a new life as a mercenary, surviving endless battles. He sharpened his abilities and carved out a fearsome reputation. He had journeyed back to the Perdium territory to atone for his past failures. But by the time he had arrived, his ancestral home had already been ground into nothingness. In that moment, our hero lost everything. But now, it all stands before him once more. All the people he cherished are still alive and well. He can hardly suppress his overwhelming joy to realize he has been granted a second chance at life. But it's far too soon to celebrate. From what he has gathered from Ricardo, they are here to hunt down a group of orcs. He remembers that fateful day with perfect clarity. It was the day that the vast majority of his raid party would be slaughtered. In his original life, he had joined the orc subjugation squad in a foolish attempt to prove his worth. At that time, the scouting report indicated there were only 3 orcs. Thus, Ghislain had assumed it would be a simple task for someone like him, a man who had 0 experience leading a military unit. But upon his arrival, he discovered over 20 orcs waiting. Nearly every single soldier was annihilated due to his own arrogance and foolish pride. This time, our hero is confident that victory is well within his grasp, as those orcs lack any real tactical sense. The true challenge is whether his soldiers will place their trust in him, given that they all view him as some useless noble scion. It seems he has no time left to strategize, because in that very instant, a watchtower is utterly annihilated, as a terrifying horde of orcs comes charging forward. Our hero is completely stunned by this unexpected sight. He was not prepared for these damned monsters to launch their assault so prematurely. And each individual orc is powerful enough to overwhelm multiple men on its own with terrifying ease. The raid squad's commander, Scovian, leaps into the heart of the conflict, bellowing for everyone to form a defensive line. But it's painfully clear that no formation or clever tactic can stand against these savage behemoths who are indiscriminately slaughtering men left and right. Even Scovian knows with certainty they are doomed, because truly being ambushed while they were completely unprepared is a death sentence. And not only that, but the number of these accursed monsters far exceeds their estimates. At the rate things are unfolding, he is convinced they will all be wiped out without a doubt. Abruptly, a soldier shouts a warning to the commander, and as he spins around, he sees a colossal monster about to bring its axe down upon him. It appears the commander lacks the time to evade the fatal blow and preserve his own life. It is then that our hero launches himself forward, yanking the commander aside. He then savagely slices through the monster's arm, as if it were made of nothing more than paper. Every single person is left completely speechless to witness how easily Ghislain executed that impossible maneuver. After all, he's meant to be useless trash. The massive creature finally collapses to the ground, while Ghislain feels a surge of annoyance that his body cannot yet wield mana. He then strides back toward the commander, outstretches his hand, and demands command authority over the troops. But it seems the commander is unwilling to believe some worthless fool should be leading the men, when all of their lives are hanging by a thread. so he gives a flat refusal. He then confronts our hero, asking if he truly believes this is some sort of child's play, even if Ghislain is the young master. Scovian cannot simply relinquish the command granted to him by the Lord. Not so easily. Well, our hero had already anticipated that no one here would believe in him, and he's enraged. Another monster charges directly at them, but Scovian quickly places himself between them, as he views our hero as an untested fool unfit to lead their soldiers. Well, it appears Ghislain has no other option but to demonstrate to these damned fools what he is capable of. So he sends his blade flying toward the beast with unbelievable speed. The commander immediately begins to scold Ghislain for this blatant insubordination, but his furious tirade is abruptly cut short when he sees that the orc charging them has already been dispatched. With just a single decisive throw of the sword, it falls to the ground lifeless. Of course, this leaves the arrogant man looking as if he's suddenly suffering from severe indigestion. Meanwhile, our hero challenges this fool, asking if he even understands the most vital principle of warfare. Naturally, the commander has no answer, as he is the true and competent one here. So Ghislain turns his gaze upon the frightened soldiers and reminds Scovian there is zero chance of victory in a battle when their forces are paralyzed by sheer terror. Their absolute first priority must be to seize the momentum. With those words spoken, our hero dashes forward yet again, retrieves his sword embedded in the monster's cranium, and vaults into the air. He lands directly on top of another orc and plunges his blade deep into the creature's skull. Scovian can hardly fathom what he is witnessing, but our hero, on the other hand, simply challenges all the monsters to approach him, if they wish to be slaughtered, of course. These idiotic beasts quickly begin to charge toward our hero, and he wields his sword like a demon possessed, slicing through every single one of these brutes that dares to stand in his path. His blinding speed, his movements, his reflexes, everything is unbelievably fast, and the carnage is unfolding so rapidly that Scovian can do nothing but stare in complete and utter shock. Even as a trained mana wielder, it's difficult for him to achieve such feats. So how is that scrawny young master managing to do all of this? Although Scovian can perceive that our hero is growing weary, he is still employing the most minimal movements to evade strikes, and his swordsmanship unerringly targets their vulnerabilities, like a sword saint who requires no mana. Or perhaps something even more profound. But our hero is not prepared to surrender just yet. He attempts to provoke these mindless beasts by demanding to know if this is the extent of their power, since they are failing to live up to their fearsome reputation as a warrior race. The other soldiers also watch in absolute disbelief, seeing that every single orc is now charging at the young master. The men all turn to their commander, awaiting his next command. But this coward is too stunned to exhibit the same courage that our hero is currently demonstrating. He cannot fathom why our hero charged into a swarm of orcs and purposely drew their aggression to make them pursue him. He fails to grasp why he is now retreating and why he's leading them directly toward the cliff's edge. It doesn't take much longer for him to understand. Ghislain intends to bait those orcs into plummeting to their deaths from the high cliff. Acting decisively, he commands his troops to form up their shield wall as they prepare to follow the young master's brilliant strategy. Meanwhile, the orcs are nipping at our hero's heels. He is fairly certain that Scovian, being a competent commander, will deduce his grand strategy. While he would love to cut down all those orcs himself, his current pathetic stamina makes it impossible. Still, this alternative plan is not a bad one. Once he finally arrives at the very edge of the precipice, the orcs spot soldiers arrayed behind them in a solid defensive line. Without a moment's hesitation, our hero leaps from the cliff, signaling to Scovian that it is time to spring the trap. The soldiers surge forward against the monsters, and with a single, unified push, the orcs are sent hurtling from the cliff to their gory demise. The gambit succeeds, and every last one of them is eliminated. The soldiers are left completely drained, but Scovian is utterly astounded when he spots our hero, still dangling from the side of the cliff, his sword embedded deep into the rock face. Despite his perilous predicament, there isn't a trace of fear on his face, only a confident smirk directed straight at his commander. For a brief second, the mustachioed Scovian is stunned, but then a proud grin spreads across his face. He swiftly extends his arm, but it's just short of reaching the young master, and the grip our hero had on his sword finally gives way. The boy begins to plummet, leaving everyone staring in shock at this unforeseen conclusion. Meanwhile, Ghislain starts to fade into the abyss of unconsciousness, where he can hear his sister's voice and see fleeting memories of her. He doesn't understand what is transpiring, and in that very instant, his sister takes his hand, and he is pulled from his dream state. He awakens to find himself lying in his bed. And the first question that enters his mind is how he is possibly still alive. He attempts to sit upright, but his entire body screams in protest, the intense exertion causing him to curl up in agony. His whole body is in torment. It must be the price for pushing past his limits. At the very least, this pain confirms that he is in fact alive. And right at that moment, a maid enters the chamber, looking overjoyed to see her master has awakened. It doesn't take our hero long to identify her as Belinda, while the young woman voices her exasperation with her words, talking about the immense worry he has caused her. Ghislain surges forward and embraces her in a tight hug. She has no idea why he's behaving this way, but we all know he's just overjoyed to see her again after all these years. You see, she was once his dedicated personal mate. Belinda had remained by his side since his early childhood. Regardless of the chaos he frequently created, she was the one person who never abandoned him. But after the family's tragic downfall, she had vanished without a trace. He never imagined he would have the chance to see her again. It is then that he resolves to tell Belinda everything. He begins to unveil some world-shattering truths, declaring that a great disaster will soon befall Perdia, and that he, in fact, had perished and returned from the dead. But as you'd expect, Belinda doesn't believe a word of it. She concedes that the orcs almost did kill him, but she refuses to accept his outlandish story. He tries to explain his situation to her once more, but she simply begins to scold him for his reckless actions. Ultimately, he chooses to drop the subject, since it's clear she won't be convinced regardless. She brings up the approaching festival, an event he might have missed had he been severely hurt. The mention of the festival startles our hero, and observing his bewildered expression, the lady decides she should remind him that, "Lady, Elena has been eagerly awaiting the day to attend the festival with him. It would present a perfect opportunity for the two siblings to finally mend their fractured relationship." At last, Ghislain recalls that there was always a celebration around this time of year, and in his previous existence, he had no chance to appreciate it due to his harrowing ordeal. He then asks her how much time remains until the festival begins, to which she replies that since it's the following week, he has approximately 1 week to prepare. The reason he remembers this seemingly insignificant festival is because it was the very day a horrific tragedy struck, one that would torment him for the remainder of his life. You see, on the day of that festival, his sister Elena is fated to be murdered. And speak of the devil, his sister steps into the room. Our hero rushes to embrace her as quickly as he can. The young lady is stunned to receive such a fervent hug from her brother completely out of nowhere. A blush creeps up her neck, and she questions if he's attempting some sort of practical joke. But little does she realize his brotherly affection for her is completely genuine. But since he refuses to release her, the young lady herself pries him from her embrace. This leaves Ghislain's frail body momentarily staggered, because his sister possesses some serious physical power, because she bluntly states that she's only visiting him because Belinda insisted she do so. Apparently, these two siblings do not share a close bond, and Elena still vividly recalls a time he deeply offended her. Of course, Ghislain is completely unaware of when he insulted her, but as the memory returns, he understands he was never particularly close with Elena in his former life. To be frank, he acted like a complete and utter piece of trash, so he offers her a sincere apology, which leaves both of the young women completely flabbergasted. Ghislain admitting to his own faults is something they've never witnessed. Consequently, they assume it must be a result of him getting knocked around by the orcs and suffering some kind of head trauma. But our hero shuts that theory down immediately, stating that he indeed got them right. At that moment, however, a sharp pain courses through him and he doubles over. This provides Elena with the perfect opening to tease him further, as it's quite obvious who truly got who in that exchange. As much as those comments might seem a bit harsh, they aren't genuinely meant to be hurtful at all. In reality, Ghislain feels a deep warmth from their familiar personalities and smiles back, thinking to himself that everyone is precisely as he remembers them. He can't help but question why his former self squandered so much time on such trivial matters. You see, during the festival the following week, Ghislain had spurned Elena's invitation to attend together and offered the lame excuse that the events with the raid squad had left him distraught. That was the final time he ever laid eyes on her, and shortly after, Elena's body was discovered, torn to shreds alongside the corpses of her bodyguards. Even now, Ghislain is haunted by the regret of not being by her side in that moment. Suddenly, a knock at the door commands their attention. It's a pair of knights, who are apparently her personal guards. The man with the dark brown hair is named Jamal, and the one positioned just behind him is Philip. Elena questions why they have entered, since they were instructed to remain outside. The man offers his apologies and explains that the servants request her to supervise their work on the festival preparations. Upon hearing this, Ghislain becomes perplexed. He wonders why they would ask Elena to perform such a task. Belinda, once more, appears somewhat let down to see Ghislain acting so ignorant. So she informs him that there is a severe labor shortage in Perdium, and even a young lady must pitch in to help. This is genuinely new information for Ghislain, because in the past, he never paid any attention to what was happening around him, so it is only natural he wouldn't know. Now that he's present, however, he declares his intention to assist them as well. His little sister is quite surprised to hear this offer, and both of the girls wonder if he truly did suffer a blow to the head. Later, we find ourselves in the lively festival grounds, where everyone is frantically setting up their booths before the grand celebration officially begins. But all of them become slightly unnerved when they learn that Ghislain intends to help them as well. Meanwhile, his sister is still trying to send him away, asking how they can accommodate someone who wishes to assist. The most helpful thing he can do, she insists, is to keep out of their path and avoid causing any trouble. But Ghislain is not about to leave her unattended here. Her body had been discovered near the slum district, a great distance from the festival location. Someone must have lured her out there or taken her by force. To ensure that doesn't occur a second time, he must first learn the layout and secrets of the castle. And at that very moment, a knight comes hurrying in, calling out Ghislain's name. It's one of the older knights, known as Old Man Fergus. The old man is panting for air, but he doesn't pause for even a moment to recover. Tears well up in his eyes as he expresses how deeply worried he was upon hearing of the orc battle. His sister also adds her own comment, remarking on how exceptionally strange he's been behaving recently. She believes it would be best if Fergus were to escort him back. Well, it appears Ghislain has no alternative but to relent. He instructs the old man to guide him to the unused train grounds within the castle walls. The old man inquires with some curiosity why he wishes to go there. Ghislain simply replies that he desires to train his body. The large, mustachioed man isn't certain what the young master is planning, but he doesn't dare to question Ghislain's decision any further. He leads him to the training facility. Upon stepping inside, the very first thing Ghislain observes is that the training hall is in far better shape than he ever anticipated. It's an absolutely ideal place for him to hone his skills, and the gear is of a quality he has never witnessed, not even during his time as a mercenary. The old man clarifies that they have kept it in good repair, just in case Ghislain ever decided to make use of these grounds. The old man has always maintained his belief that Ghislain would eventually recover from whatever internal turmoil he has been enduring. Seeing the genuine concern in the old man's eyes, our hero is compelled to acknowledge how much the old man has tried to support him. This entire time, he had been completely oblivious to any of this, and now he feels a pang of regret for not understanding it earlier. He then places a hand on the old man's shoulder and reassures him that death feels absolutely terrible, so he intends to live for a very long time. As is now typical, the old man is baffled to hear him speak, as if he has already stared death in the face. But Ghislain swiftly confirms his words, nonchalantly informing him that he did, in fact, die and was brought back to life. But of course, the old man dismisses this as pure fantasy. In any case, Ghislain decides it's time to begin his training, sending the old man away and telling him he is free to leave. Observing the immense respect Fergus shows him, Ghislain contemplates how he has consistently treated everyone around him, as if they were nothing but his adversaries. But now, looking back, he understands he was just hopelessly naive. Regardless, Ghislain shifts his focus to the critical task at hand. In his past life, he had learned that the one responsible for Elena's murder was a lord from an adjacent territory. Because of that incident, Perdium was dragged into a bloody war, which ultimately resulted in its complete destruction. Elena's death, in essence, was the catalyst for his entire house's tragic demise. This means he must correct the course of history starting right now. And the first order of business is to forge a stronger body. It is unfortunate that he has so little time, but he is certain he can at least regain mastery over his mana. Mana is an ethereal energy source that enables humans to shatter their physical limitations. And the majority of people believe that sensing and absorbing mana is the most difficult step. But for Ghislain, he managed to accomplish that even on a chaotic battlefield. He must link the mana motes floating in the atmosphere and weave them together, much like winding thread onto a spool. For a man like him, who has survived thousands, no, tens of thousands of life or death battles, forging a mana core is laughably simple. But if it were truly that simple, he would never have become one of the 7 strongest warriors alive, employing the technique from a half-burnt grimoire he once found, and using the natural mana core all humans possess. Ghislain is able to fashion a second, and then even a third. He links them together into a web of multiple cores to generate an overwhelming, explosive power. All this exertion, pushing his body to its breaking point, causes blood to trickle from his mouth and nostrils, his face slick with perspiration. I suppose he has reached his body's current threshold. Although he managed to create 5 cores in his previous life, this forbidden technique is designed to produce immense power in a very short duration. The major drawback is that it consumes an incredible amount of mana. In hindsight, this was the primary factor in his defeat against the Duin in his past life, who had brought an entire order of knights when he was already depleted of mana. If it had been a one-on-one duel, he is certain he would have been victorious. The art itself is fundamentally unstable, but for the time being, it will suffice. Besides, this time, he possesses a young vessel and ample time for mastery. He is fiercely determined that he will claim Aduin's head this time around, and those bastards who supported House Delphine, the ones who aided in his country's ruin, they will all fall before him. Flash forward 1 week, and the fateful day of the festival has arrived. Our hero is prepared. He is fully armed and striding through the city with unwavering resolve. But as he walks, he sees his sister standing nearby, who seems quite astonished to see him. She's taken aback that her brother, who has never shown any interest in festivals, has actually made an appearance. Not only that, but his behavior has been incredibly bizarre lately, and she's been told he has done nothing but train for the last week. Ghislain attempts to dismiss her concerns, reminding her that as the heir to a knightly house, physical training is simply an expected part of his duty. But she counters with a devastatingly sharp retort, reminding him how he has always despised the notion of becoming lord, which is a primary reason for his constant friction with her father. Despite the pointed remark, she starts to depart with a faint smile on her face, as she is secretly pleased to see him finally acting as he should. Her comment forces Ghislain to consider how his new choices have begun to change things, not merely how others see him, but also the very path of his destiny. The major currents of fate may still flow in the same direction, but it's becoming more challenging to predict the effect of his actions on the more subtle details. Making strategic use of his future knowledge is now his greatest weapon, and he must adapt to every changing situation with precision. With that resolve, he is prepared to confront his sister's assassins. Later, he stays close to his sister, remaining on high alert. After some time passes, however, Elena grows weary, remarking that there's nothing particularly unique about the festival. It's exactly the same as all the other years. Meanwhile, Ghislain is lost in his own thoughts, realizing the festival is nearing its end, and yet no major incident has occurred. This makes him wonder if perhaps the future has been altered, simply because he has remained so close to Elena's side. But just as this idea forms in his mind, her bodyguards appear before them. They propose taking her to a more vibrant section of the festival to experience some real excitement. As they start to lead her away, Ghislain swiftly connects all the pieces of the puzzle. He realizes that it must be these very bastards, the traitors within their own house. Elena's personal escort knights, Jamal and Philip, are considered the most loyal knights in their family. They have served as Elena's protectors since she was just a girl, and it was widely believed they were slain while defending her. That was the narrative in Ghislain's past. But now, Ghislain feels a gnawing suspicion. This must be the setup, and he is now certain that these men are the betrayers of their household. So he decides to shadow the knights from a distance. The location they lead her to is completely deserted, which leaves Elena visibly irritated, and she begins to voice her complaints. As she grumbles, Ghislaine's doubts solidify into certainty. Initially, the alley might appear to be a simple, empty street, but observing how the various obstacles obstruct all escape paths, it is obvious that this ambush was meticulously planned. He is soon pulled from his deep analysis, when his sister begins to pull him along with her. Feeling the surprising strength of her grip, Ghislaine can't resist asking her if she has been secretly lifting weights recently, because her strength is far too great for a young noble lady. But just then, Jamal halts her progress, and the chilling expression on his face makes it obvious that his intentions are anything but honorable. A shiver runs down Elena's spine, and she begins to feel afraid, wondering why they are behaving so strangely. Jamal quickly offers an apology for his menacing expression, but then his face contorts into something far more sinister. He informs her that he just needs her to be patient a little longer. It is only a minor request. Elena is terrified and feels completely trapped. And just then, a new figure walks onto the scene. It's a man wearing glasses, followed by two of his hired thugs. This man's name is Frank, and he is visibly impressed to see how perfectly Jamal has carried out their sinister plan. He then directs a question to Jamal regarding Ghislaine, because he does not recall asking for this useless fool to be present. Jamal assures his new employer that he will deal with this brat, and that Frank won't even have to pay extra for it. He smugly explains that Ghislaine naively followed his sister, never realizing he was walking directly into his own prepared grave. At last, Ghislaine speaks, and the first thing he wants to know from this despicable traitor is how he plans to escape after betraying the Perdium family. The traitor just laughs with not a shred of fear, stating that all he needs to do is flee to some distant land. Besides, he is sick of this impoverished, God-forsaken territory that has already been ravaged by barbarians. He is confident that he's not the only one. Many others wish to abandon Perdium as well. But before he can utter another word, our hero silences him, not with words, but with a spray of blood from his mouth. The sight is enough to send a shockwave through everyone present. As the traitor collapses to the pavement in two separate pieces, our hero glares down at him with pure fury. He reminds this scum that even if people are leaving this territory, they never committed an act of betrayal. He is seething with rage and directs a murderous look at the other traitor, who, in a desperate panic, pulls Elena closer to him, hoping to avoid the same grim destiny as his comrade. But alas, he is not fast enough. A blade impales his skull, and the traitor shudders, gasping for his final, desperate breaths. The henchmen who arrived with Frank begin to have second thoughts about whether they should even fight. What is even more bewildering to them is if this man is truly the firstborn son of Perdia. From what they have heard, he possesses no practical combat skill or even fundamental training. Frank, however, is certain he is indeed the eldest son, but he still cannot fathom how this young man managed to eliminate two trained knights so incredibly easily. And even more astonishing, his strikes were clearly empowered with mana. Meanwhile, the girl clings to her brother, shaking with fear, but he renders her unconscious with a swift chop to her neck, telling her to take a brief moment of rest. Frank, the bastard, expresses his thanks to our hero for dispatching the two knights, claiming they were intending to eliminate them anyway. He even praises our hero for his god-tier abilities, and can't help but inquire where he acquired them. But Ghislaine is under no obligation to provide them an answer, so he cuts them off with a cold stare. Affairs. He takes a moment to assess his adversaries, a trio of them in all, but only their leader emanates a truly potent aura of mana. Regardless, our hero intends to conclude this confrontation swiftly. But before the bloodshed resumes, he demands to know their master's name. Frank just smirks with pure arrogance, scoffing at the inquiry. Why would a man about to perish need such trivial information? Well, Ghislaine knows these cowards will not reveal their secrets willingly, but he possesses his own methods for extracting the truth. One of the henchmen suggests a quick decapitation, but the boss silences him, for he desires Ghislaine to remain alive. He intends to shatter every single bone in his body until he is rendered utterly and completely broken. His true aim is to inflict unimaginable torment, leaving him conscious, yet powerless to do anything but right, believing that his victim's suffering must be prolonged, and as agonizing as he can possibly make. With that decree, the two lackeys lunge toward him. Anticipating their move, Ghislaine reveals a firecracker and hurls it at them. This completely unexpected tactic from our hero momentarily stuns one of the advancing henchmen, leaving him utterly baffled as to why someone would deploy a firecracker. That single, fleeting moment of confusion is the only opening Ghislain requires. Faster than a thought, he moves, and in a flash of steel, one of the henchmen falls, his life instantly extinguished. The second thug lunges forward immediately after, but Ghislain is more than prepared. He effortlessly deflects the strike, incapacitates his opponent, and wrenches the sword from his grip. At last, he executes the final motion, cutting the man down as if he were made of straw. The very instant his lackeys hit the ground, their leader doesn't squander a single second and attempts to strike our hero from his blind spot. A true coward's tactic. But our hero's instincts are on a whole different plane, and he parries the attack with almost contemptuous ease. The villain is left completely dumbfounded, realizing his supposedly flawless ambush has been utterly foiled. Wasting no time, our hero decides it's time to counterattack. He moves with such blinding speed that Frank can scarcely even follow his motion. The blade carves a deep gash across the villain's neck, and the pipe clenched between his teeth clatters to the stone floor. The villain attempts to rally and unleash another desperate strike. But yet again, our hero repels it with casual ease. Frank, rather candidly, concedes that his throat would have been completely torn open had he not reinforced it with mana. Even our hero is impressed, realizing this scoundrel focused all his ambient mana around his neck to mitigate the blow. It's astonishing he could execute that. It is then that Frank finally decides to reveal his true power. Clutching his blade with a death grip, he propels himself directly toward our hero, but then he catches sight of the chilling grin on our hero's face. That predatory smile momentarily unnerves him. It's almost as if our hero had been baiting him into this. And that's when Ghislain overwhelms the scoundrel, landing a vicious kick squarely against his face. Frank manages to land gracefully instead of being sent flying, and smirks, proclaiming that with his level of mana, a simple attack like that is completely useless. But then he is proven horrifically wrong when he suddenly begins to spew a horrifying amount of blood. Frank's expression twists with bewilderment, having no clue what just transpired. Even with a dense layer of mana fortifying his entire body, he is in total shock. How did Ghislain manage to bypass his defense with nothing more than pure martial technique? Meanwhile, Ghislain reflects on how he never discovered the mastermind responsible for his sister's demise. But now that he knows, he is prepared to make this villain pay dearly. He tells Frank to steel himself for what's to come. With that, Ghislain unleashes the power of his third core. The villain can only stare in utter disbelief, but he has no time to comprehend it, because Ghislain has already closed the distance. The two engage at a speed so ferocious that all one can perceive are the afterimages of their blades. Frank is desperately giving it his all, but it's obvious he is no longer a match. His hands are already beginning to go numb, and regardless of how much mana he summons, it's simply not enough. His own blade begins to fracture from strength. He has never even heard of a technique that could amplify mana so violently, much less with this degree of surgical precision. It's as if Ghislain has transformed into an entirely different being, and that different being lands a calamitous strike that leaves a horrifying gash across Frank's torso. But Ghislain is not yet finished. He impales his sister's would-be killer with all his might, but he does not permit him to die. There are vital questions that demand answers. Through clenched teeth, he demands to know who ordered Elena's assassination. But it appears Ghislain isn't going to get his answers easily from this particular villain. The scoundrel swiftly produces a set of concealed throwing knives, but before he can hurl them toward Elena, ethereal threads manifest and bind his hand, preventing any further movement. And the one controlling those threads is, of course, our hero. Ghislain offers this villain one final opportunity to confess. If he answers every question truthfully, he gives his word to withdraw his blade. Meanwhile, Frank's mind is once again completely reeling as he realizes the threads. Our hero is manipulating our forged from pure mana. Meanwhile, Ghislain is certain a man of his skill would know how to heal himself. But then again, it won't matter if our hero shatters this villain's mana core. So, without a second's hesitation, Ghislain begins channeling raw magic into the sword that is already embedded in the villain's gut. The villain howls in agony as he feels his mana core being torn apart. This is an incredibly dangerous maneuver our hero is attempting, because a single misstep, and the resulting mana backlash could trigger a massive detonation and vaporize this entire city block. It literally seems as though Ghislain is attempting a mutual self-destruction. But you must understand, our hero is no reckless novice. He can manage this risk with ease. Even this long-haired villain can see that Ghislain is not bluffing with the way things are progressing. He knows his fate is already sealed. When he gazes into Ghislain's eyes, all he sees is the specter of a bloodthirsty demon. So Frank decides to show a sliver of wisdom for once. And at last, he reveals the name of Count Desmond, the true architect behind these assassination plots. He confesses further that this entire conspiracy was a scheme to ignite a war between the Perdium and Degard families. It seems Ghislain does not have a favorable opinion of this name, because in his previous timeline, such clandestine operations were handled by the families, who were sworn to the ducal houses. And if his intuition serves him right, he is certain that it was Duke Delphine who masterminded this entire plot. In any case, the fact remains that this bespectacled man came here to end his sister's life. So our hero ensures he eliminates this villain as well, to finally claim vengeance from his past life. Frank is in utter disbelief, thinking Ghislain is going back on his earlier promise. But our hero simply reminds this villain of all the sins he has committed. So this scoundrel has no right to feel fear, now that it's finally his turn to become the prey. But to our hero's surprise, the villain begins to let out a weak chuckle. Even with his dying breath, this villain is certain nothing will be different, even if our hero manages to kill him. Since he has already set events in motion with the Degard family, he states with certainty that Perdium will be destroyed by the coming war. No matter what, Ghislain swiftly clamps his hand over the villain's repulsive mouth to silence his final words. He lets this piece of trash in on a little secret that he has reawakened after already dying once. So he will not allow the past to repeat itself this time. Those were the last words Frank ever heard before. Our hero amplified the mana core-shattering technique. The mana inside backfires, and Ghislain redirects it into the heavens, causing it to detonate with a massive blast like some grotesque firework. Ghislain is also left gasping for air. But at least all the conspirators involved have been neutralized. He then looks over to his unconscious sister, who appears to be unharmed and resting peacefully. As he shuts his eyes to allow his muscles to relax, a spray of blood escapes from his lips, and he doubles over from the excruciating pain. He reflects that detonating 3 cores was never a problem, back when he was the legendary Mercenary king. But his current frail body severely restricts his true potential. But this is still not nearly enough to make him yield. He quickly moves to a nearby building where he discovers a corpse. In his past life, the authorities had located another body besides Elena's in this very spot. And based on what Frank had revealed earlier, this body is supposedly the son of the Degard family. There is also another lifeless body here, the escort knight who was slain during the struggle. This is evidently how the Perdium family, in his former timeline, reached the false conclusion that the Degard family must have been the ones who orchestrated Elena's assassination. The very second these corpses were discovered, the war would have been inevitable. So Ghislain resolves to erase all evidence. After setting the entire building ablaze, he lifts his sister and begins to walk away. It is then that we spot this mysterious, cloaked figure in the shadows, intently observing our hero. Later, he arrives before a council of the shadowy figures orchestrating this entire game, and delivers his report that the operation has failed. It should be obvious that the powerful figures are not pleased to hear this news. The hooded man attempts to argue that it was all due to Ghislain. Perdium, that name captures their interest, because how could a worthless heir from the north pull off such a major move? One of the powerful figures also states that as far as he is aware, Ghislain is a useless piece of filth. So he is not sure why this informant is using him as a scapegoat for their botched operation. But the man tries to insist that Ghislain was a completely different person from the intelligence and gossip they had on him. The way he managed everything with such masterful skill made him seem like an entirely different individual. He attempts to reassure his superiors that he has already handled matters with the guard, so initiating the territorial conflict will not be a problem. He pleads for just one more opportunity to redeem himself. But the powerful figure becomes enraged because the consequences of this failure have created immense complications, and every member of the council is on the verge of losing their minds. They all unanimously command this fool to simply eliminate that nuisance. Ghislain, it is then that the highest-ranking figure among them finally speaks, shattering the tense atmosphere. He asks the hooded man how he intends to deal with the boy, to which the hooded man replies that he will arrange for a duel to occur. Naturally, and the warrior who will face Ghislain is exceptionally powerful. They ask for the identity of this champion, to which the hooded man reveals that his name is Cain Loges, and he is renowned for his overwhelming strength-based swordsmanship. Despite his youth, he is the very definition of raw power, and he is certain that there is no one in the Northern Territories who can rival his might. Not to mention, Cain is Ghislain's own cousin, so the hooded man is sure it will not seem forced for them to clash. The entire council falls silent as they start to weigh this new strategy. The highest-ranking figure, however, makes it abundantly clear that if this operation also results in failure, there will not be another chance. Terrified, the hooded man quickly swears to achieve decisive results this time. The scene shifts to the Perdium Castle's training hall, where we find Fergus, who has come to announce dinner time to our hero. It is then that Fergus spots a tendril of mana snaking towards him. It seizes the sword that is hanging right next to him, and the mana tendril swiftly begins to recoil, with the sword now attached to it. After a sufficient amount of training, Ghislain is pleased to see his progress. It is then that he notices the old man, who immediately bows his head respectfully before our hero, apologizing profusely for interrupting his training session. But the old man cannot suppress his immense curiosity and asks how Ghislain managed to do what he just did. Ghislain casually explains that they are called mana threads, using mana as if it were string. In his past life, he employed this technique constantly, but at his current level of skill, he needs to detonate his core to use it as he once did, because he currently has insufficient mana reserves. However, if he only creates a single thread to conserve mana, our hero is confident he can still wield it effectively, even with his limited supply of mana. Fergus is certain he has trained his mana for a very long time, but he has never witnessed anything like this before. Now that the old man considers it, he remembers that just a short time ago, Ghislain couldn't even wield mana, let alone train with it so skillfully. He cannot comprehend how our hero conceived of using mana in this fashion. In any case, Fergus redirects his focus to the reason he came here. He humbly bows his head just a little and conveys his profound gratitude for protecting the young lady. But Ghislain sees no reason for anyone's gratitude. She is his sister, and he would have done the same without question. Several days elapse after that incident, and the festival has been suspended. This is only logical, considering a guardian knight attempted to abduct the young lady. We then see Elena, whose expression is anything but cheerful. She seems quite frustrated that no one will believe her when she insists that Ghislain was the one who rescued her. She asks her brother why he makes no effort to persuade them, to which our hero simply shrugs it off. He doesn't care, and furthermore, they wouldn't believe him in any case. Belinda's blood is absolutely boiling, just contemplating how the villains were actually Jamal and Philip, the very ones who tried to eliminate Elena. In any case, Ghislain is relieved that his sister is safe, and that he managed to prevent the war from erupting. But he is certain that those conspirators will not give up so easily, and he cannot single-handedly thwart them forever. Therefore, he must expand his own military power. At that precise moment, a maid comes in carrying food. When the maid presents his meal, Ghislain finds it strange that he is being served a piece of stale bread, rather than something more appetizing. He questions Belinda about it, to which she clarifies that it is a result of the recent turmoil. Just then, a portly man begins yelling at the top of his lungs, demanding financial restitution for the losses incurred by the festival's abrupt cancellation. And it's not just one portly man. There's an entire mob of merchants protesting outside the castle walls. Their demand is straightforward. They want to be compensated for their losses. Our hero peers out the window and asks about the irate crowd. It is then that Belinda reminds him that this land is filled with merchants who depend on the revenue generated by the festival for their livelihood. The previous year, the merchants had an excellent season, but since the festival was halted after a single day, it's only logical that they would be furious. Ghislain hadn't grasped until this moment just how dire his country's economic situation truly is. He understands that if he fails to meet the merchant's demands, the situation will only escalate and become more violent. So he orders Fergus to command the soldiers to placate the angry mob. But the old man matter-of-factly states that they have no available soldiers. He clarifies that the majority of them have been sent to the Forest of Monsters for reconstruction work due to the damage from the ORC attack. Well, it seems Gislin's predicament is even more precarious than he realized. You see, Perdium exists in a perpetual state of conflict. To the north, they are in constant battle with barbarian tribes, and on the other side lies the formidable Forest of Monsters, from which beasts can emerge at any given time. Since he has no money, he will also have no soldiers, which only compounds his problems. He takes Belinda aside for a private conversation, and in a low voice, he reminds her that since she is in charge of his finances, they must find a way to appease the merchants. But the lady informs him that there is no money left. When he demands to know why, she reminds him the Lord suspended his allowance because he constantly wasted money as if it were water. The reality of being penniless disgusts him, so he insists that she loan him some of her own money. But the lady says that she doesn't have any funds either. Every odd seems to be stacked against him. No money, no soldiers. What in the world does he even possess? Without even a meager amount of funds, there is absolutely nothing he can do. Even with his knowledge of the future, he needs capital first to make any of his plans a reality. Just as he is pondering this dilemma, Ricardo comes sprinting in at full speed. He is completely winded, and our hero immediately asks him what has happened and why he is in such a frantic state. Ricardo, practically yelling at the top of his voice, exclaims that there is a huge problem. Apparently, young Master Cain has demanded an audience with our hero. The mention of Cain's name catches Gislin completely off guard. It is then that we see one of our hero's own knights, Commander Scoven, being utterly pummeled by Cain. Cain's massive, rippling muscles and overwhelming strength are literally caving in the knight's face, as if it were a ripe fruit. Each blow lands with the impact of a sledgehammer, and it is obvious that Cain is holding nothing back. The final punch at last renders the poor knight completely unconscious. Gislin shows up just in time to see his knight collapsed on the floor, horribly beaten. The expression on Gislin's face makes it plain that our hero is not at all pleased to see his subordinate in such a condition, rage smoldering in his eyes. He turns to confront his cousin. The behemoth standing before him is so colossal that Gislin appears like a mere child by comparison. The grin on the giant's face is even more terrifying. Accompanying this muscular brute is also his personal escort knight. You see, the heir of the Logis County, with whom House Perdium maintained an alliance, is Cain Logis. He was simultaneously Gislin's only friend at the time and his bitter rival. The giant lumbers toward Gislin after brutalizing his knight, but Gislin does not show a hint of fear. He coolly asks Ricardo for the full account of what led to this situation. Ricardo hastily explains that they were responding to a report of a brawl at a local tavern where they discovered Cain and his escort knight. It was then that Cain demanded of Commander Scoven if the rumors circulating about young Master Gislin were accurate. So Commander Scoven recounted the specifics of the rumors about our hero. But that's when Cain seized the commander by the throat, because Cain was convinced the commander was spouting lies, and he would not abide someone lying in the presence of the heir of Logis. With that, Ricardo concludes his flashback. At that moment, Cain's escort knight interjects. Since Ricardo is not providing the complete story, he decides to offer his own version of events. According to him, Commander Scoven had claimed that Gislin, who had never once trained, single-handedly defeated an orc, and then dealt with the treacherous escort knights, all on his own. That is why Scoven was beaten, which was intended as a lesson for telling such blatant falsehoods. The knight arrogantly states that none of this would have transpired if Scoven hadn't lied from the very beginning. Gislin doesn't speak his thoughts aloud, but from his internal monologue, we understand the depth of his loathing for Cain. Apparently, Cain had once been his subordinate, and whenever he came to visit Perdium, he consistently stirred up trouble. Even after causing all that chaos, no one dared to say a word, because he was essentially a key ally for House Perdium. No one ever treated Cain with disrespect. Unlike Gislin, who was perpetually burdened by an inferiority complex, Cain's self-assurance and assertive nature were lauded as traits befitting a true heir, which is why our hero was judged all the more harshly. Let's now switch to Cain's point of view. This massive brute is shocked at how much restraint Gislin has shown, because ordinarily he would have charged at him after this level of provocation. We then flash back to a short time ago in Logis County. There, Cain received a direct order to assassinate Ghislaine. The one who issued this command was the same hooded man, who had received a great deal of criticism from his superiors for failing his last mission. The hooded man had promised Cain that if he were successful in this endeavor, the esteemed one would lend his support to the Logis family. Cain had boasted that he could easily vanquish Ghislaine, since he was nothing more than a pathetic weakling. But what troubled Cain was that Ghislaine was also an heir of this land, so he wasn't sure how he could eliminate him without causing political complications. The hooded man proposed that they could bait Ghislaine into a formal duel, making the outcome appear to be a tragic accident. It would simply be seen as a minor squabble between two heirs. The hooded man also vowed to assist Cain by posing as his escort knight to manipulate the entire situation, so there would be no need for any worry. The prospect of getting to kill his own cousin intrigues Cain, and the villain agrees to the plan without hesitation. In the present, Cain is contemplating why they want Ghislaine dead. He wonders if perhaps Ghislaine has changed in some way, and that is the reason for this new order. But in any event, Cain moves forward with the scheme. In an effort to provoke Ghislaine, he calls out to him, asking why he is just standing there motionless. Since they are now face to face, he should make the proper arrangements. Ghislaine has no idea what arrangements he is referring to. Cain reminds him that he has heard the festival was cut short, so why not elevate the mood and have a truly memorable time? He further reminds him how they have always been in perfect harmony. When it came to matters such as this, Ghislaine shows little reaction and enigmatically asks if he is referring to wine and women. You see, this villain always had Ghislaine procure alcohol and companions. Every single time he visited, Ghislaine had complied with his demands back then because he did not want to be beaten into submission. But he will no longer bow to this villain's whims. Because of Cain, he had to squander a vast amount of money, which is also the reason his father cut off his financial support. But it appears that Ghislaine has at last identified the source of his financial woes, and he is certain that Cain is also the answer to this problem. Cain, on the other hand, persists in his demands, telling him to produce the goods immediately. Of course, Ghislaine plays along and assures Cain he will bring them right away. But first, he wants this villain to settle the debts he has accrued. The hooded villain can sense the dangerous aura and energy Ghislaine is emitting. Even Cain's demeanor becomes serious as he asks what debts he is speaking of. Ghislaine just flashes a charming smile as he reminds him that he had been managing and paying for everything Cain had requested of him out of his own pocket. So now, he wants that money returned to him. At least 1,000 gold. Of course, the behemoth is stunned to hear such an absurd demand, because he is certain that all of that should have cost no more than 100 gold. Furthermore, Cain always believed that Ghislaine did all of those things because they were companions. It was like a friendship with certain advantages. But alas, Ghislaine would not describe their relationship as a friendship because he had served as this villain's personal doormat for the longest time. But now he insists that this brute pays his due. If he values his own life, he is in desperate need of funds, and he will not permit this villain to depart without settling his account. An unnerving silence descends upon the room, and even Ghislaine's knight, Ricardo, is sweating bullets from the audacious proclamation Ghislaine just made. The giant furiously rises to his feet, obviously enraged. He does not appreciate the idea of Ghislaine becoming too arrogant. He is convinced that all the rumors Ghislaine is spreading about his accomplishments have gone to his head, which is why he is behaving so audaciously. To Cain, Ghislaine is still nothing more than a parasite leeching off this territory. So the villain clenches his massive fist, prepared to crush this parasite once and for all. But even as the fist hurtles directly toward Ghislaine, he doesn't even bat an eye, let alone retreat. And before the punch can make contact, he simply shifts his body just enough and allows the punch to sail harmlessly past him. The entire sequence is nothing less than astonishing. Cain swings again with his full fury, but Ghislaine drops low and delivers a precise, open palm strike directly into the giant's midsection. The impact of the blow is so severe that it almost forces Cain to vomit up blood. Our hero attempts to counter with another attack, but Cain manages to block him in midair. Even though Cain appears to take no real damage, he still feigns as if he is in great pain. The hooded figure hurries over, asking Cain if he is unharmed. But it is evident that the giant man is far from okay. His pride, the only thing larger than his physique, has now been completely crushed. Ghislain nonchalantly tells him to cease his whining because that strike caused no real harm. But Cain continues to act as if he is suffering terribly. The patrons in the tavern are left utterly speechless, unable to comprehend what they have just seen. Ghislain, the supposedly feeble heir, just defeated Cain Loges with almost no effort at all, and the entire tavern is unsure of how to react. Our hero can plainly see that this brute is only pretending, and he can clearly deduce what Cain hopes to accomplish with this charade. The giant villain then quickly turns to his hooded knight, asking if he approved of his little performance. Naturally, the hooded man praises him for his masterful acting. Cain has now perfectly manipulated the situation to make it appear as if the blame rests entirely with Ghislain in the eyes of the public. So this should provide more than enough justification for a duel. Cain is more than prepared to capitalize on this opening, because aiding the powerful figures in eliminating Ghislain will secure him the backing of those in the highest authority, and he desperately desires the support of those above him. Not only that, but it will also help him weaken the Perdium household. So he continues the act, produces a glove, and with some dramatic flair, he sets the stage to officially demand a duel. But before this villain can slap the glove across our hero's face, our hero moves first and throws the glove directly into this brute's face, issuing the challenge for the duel himself. Since Cain has insulted the heir of Perdium before everyone and assaulted his knight, our hero demands to have a duel. An expressionless mask falls over the giant villain's face, but that blank look quickly transforms into a malevolent smirk, because he believes Ghislain has just sealed his own fate by demanding this duel. So it is no surprise that he accepts the challenge. On the other hand, a self-assured smile remains fixed on our hero's face as he calls out to his knight, Ricardo, and instructs him to gather all the merchants who are protesting in front of the castle. He wants them to know that Ghislain, the young master of the Perdium household, is about to make them a great deal of money. You see, the festival was abruptly stopped, and the mood, which had reached a fever pitch, suddenly went cold. This left a large number of tourists who couldn't bring themselves to leave. They are likely in a state of unfulfilled excitement, unable to spend their money or enjoy their time. In such a situation, if a major event were to be held to entertain them, everyone would be absolutely ecstatic. And so, as our hero stands in the arena opposite that villain, the crowd is erupting with thunderous cheers. People are flocking from distant lands, and the vendors in the marketplace are at last able to earn some money from the tourists. That same portly merchant who was leading the protest has established a table for spectators to place wagers on their chosen champion. A great many of them place their bets on Master Cain, which is only natural as they believe it's the most secure wager. The giant villain is also prepared with his massive sword to begin the duel, but he is somewhat annoyed that Ghislain has transformed a solemn duel into a public spectacle. He makes one thing crystal clear before they start. His blade will not halt, even if our hero surrenders. Ghislain is neither afraid nor shocked to hear this, since he can discern the villain's true intent is to kill him anyway. Since it appears they have amassed a sufficient crowd, Ghislain decides to officially commence the duel. It is then that the hooded villain intervenes and declares that a proper wager cannot be made at this rate. Everyone is baffled as to what this hooded man is implying. So the portly merchant clarifies that not a single person has wagered any money on young Master Ghislain. A wave of murmurs spreads through the crowd as they believe the outcome is already a foregone conclusion and that Ghislain has no hope of winning. Cain finds it hilarious to think that. Even the betting market wants nothing to do with Ghislain, since the betting is completely one-sided. They decide to alter the terms of the wager to make it somewhat viable. But it is then that Commander Scoven produces a large sack of coins and places his bet on young Master Ghislain. And not only that, Lady Elena also brings forth a bag filled with gold to wager on her brother. No one was surprised when Commander Scoven appeared, but to see Elena herself, even our hero is slightly taken aback, as are all the spectators in the crowd. She then asks the merchant if this sum of money is adequate for the wager, and the portly merchant humbly agrees that it is. Now that there are people betting on Ghislain, Cain decides to commence the duel without any further delay, though he seems a bit irritated by this turn of events. In any case, the duel starts, and our hero grants Cain the privilege of the first attack. After all, Cain is the younger cousin, so as the older brother, Ghislain, would be honored to give his little brother the first opportunity to strike. This budget version of the Hulk is astonished to hear this, but our hero just flourishes his sword as he unsheathes it and confidently challenges Kane to come at it. A deadly silence falls over the giant villain's face, and it seems he has swallowed the bait whole. He assumes his stance and surges forward like a raging bull and brings his massive sword crashing down. The blades of the two combatants clash with a deafening ring, and this knockoff Hulk pours every last bit of his strength into the impact. But our hero seems completely unfazed, so the villain once more swings his sword without any strategy, and once more our hero evades. The brute then leaps into the air to deliver a kick, but yet again his attempt is effortlessly sidestepped by Ghislain. After that brief back-and-forth exchange of attacks, both combatants fall back to their original positions, while this unsettling brute smiles with his equally unsettling grin. Our hero can see how arrogant and overconfident Kane is feeling. Belinda is sweating nervously after witnessing the young master clash like this with that behemoth. She even implores the young lady to stop her brother. Meanwhile, the hooded man feels absolutely certain that Ghislain is as good as dead. He is convinced that the moment our hero chose to cross swords with Kane, he walked right into their trap. He is sure that Ghislain will be overwhelmed by Kane's immense strength and will become dominated by the idea that there is no chance to counter-attack. He will ultimately expend all his energy just on evasion. In the end, the depleted Ghislain will reveal an opening and inevitably meet his doom. A warrior forged in countless duels, his power is absolute. Yet, our hero counters this behemoth's might with breathtaking agility, weaving through the hurricane of steel without breaking a sweat. Even Kane is forced to concede that Ghislain moves like a phantom, and his skills have clearly ascended to a whole new level. So the brute unleashes even more of his monstrous strength, gripping the razor-sharp edge of his own blade with bare hands, attempting to bludgeon Ghislain with a full-force blow. Although our hero manages to parry the direct impact with his own blade, he finds his weapon caught fast in the massive sword's guard. Kane, with all his immense power, sends our hero hurtling through the air. Every single spectator is left completely stunned, watching the young master being tossed through the sky. And the only one who looks thrilled is the hooded villain, who is certain that Ghislain is finally finished. But it seems this hooded fool is about to have his assumptions completely shattered, while Ghislain is suspended in midair. He instantly infuses his legs with a surge of potent mana. After regaining his aerial balance, he lands flawlessly on his feet. At first, our hero was merely toying with the brute, but since this oaf has now gone too far, he is ready to impart a painful lesson. He rockets toward the behemoth with divine speed, a blur of motion. The hooded man is utterly flabbergasted to see that this young man made a safe descent back to Earth by focusing mana directly into his legs. Ghislain, on the other hand, labels this cheap Hulk a simple-minded swordsman. He surmises that this fool must believe he is the most powerful, just because his opponents would become intimidated if he displayed even a fraction of his power. But our hero is poised to open this villain's eyes by demonstrating that overwhelming force is not the be-all and end-all. The brute feels insulted, so being the beast he is, he charges headlong at our hero once more, demanding to know how he will accomplish that. It is then that our hero plants his feet firmly on the ground, and after kicking up the hilt of his sword, he instantly vaults into the air and lands a flurry of strikes upon this gorilla. But the gorilla counters with his own massive blade. Ghislain swiftly evades and then runs directly up the sword itself. Once the behemoth is momentarily disarmed, Ghislain seizes the opening, his blade landing a decisive strike. After that lethal dance of shimmering steel, our hero comes to a dramatic halt, and crimson blossoms erupt from every gash on the giant's body, where he was struck by Ghislain's sword. All the spectators are left completely speechless, and the crowd suddenly explodes with disbelief as they finally comprehend that our hero has truly improved immensely. They begin to worry if he is actually going to win this duel. Meanwhile, Elena is beaming with pride as she confidently reminds Belinda that she was worried for nothing. Commander Scoven is just as proud to witness our hero's incredible display, but the only individual sweating profusely is this coward in the hoodie. He can plainly see that the wounds are only superficial, even though our hero could have easily cut much deeper, had that been his intention. This leads him to conclude that Ghislain didn't inflict a fatal wound on purpose. The brute, on the other hand, is feeling completely humiliated to witness such divine swordsmanship from our hero. Ghislain then shifts his focus to the vanquished behemoth and casually tosses his blade aside, as he intends to continue this fight without a weapon. You see, he believes the disparity in skill is too great to justify the continued use of a weapon, so he will now fight with his bare hands. This level of disrespect is enough to make the behemoth's blood boil. Ghislain is prepared to seize this moment to teach Cain a severe lesson, and he plans to engrave those lessons with his own bare fist. Ghislain is certain that this simple-minded, muscle-bound fool is no match for him in the art of the sword, so he decides to take a handicap and engage in fisticuffs, a discipline in which the brute is supposed to excel. This time, our hero proposes a wager of 2,000 more gold, which is double the sum he had originally demanded from Cain. The crowd is in an uproar to hear the mention of 2,000 gold on a bare-knuckle brawl, even though this was meant to be a formal duel. And let's not forget about the hooded coward. He can barely contain the sweat pouring down his face. To think that our hero would dare challenge Cain to a fistfight. He truly never imagined he would witness this day, though deep down in the recesses of his mind, he believes there's still a possibility for Cain to win. After all, the portly merchant swiftly calls for everyone to place their new bets, announcing that the event is now a bare-knuckle brawl between young Lord Ghislain and young Master Cain. This time, a significant number of people are betting on our hero, as their perceptions are beginning to change. They are realizing that pure strength isn't always the deciding factor. And for that very reason, they are placing their faith in Ghislain. The budget Hulk is still full of his own arrogance, but he nevertheless agrees to Ghislain's challenge. However, he refuses to part with his sword and intends to wield it against our hero. Belinda, terrified at this completely unfair development, immediately urges the young master to retrieve his own blade. But the giant villain has already begun to swing his sword down, while our hero remains as calm and collected as ever, prepared to knock some sense into this brute. The very instant that blade comes whistling down, Ghislain ducks, moving so swiftly that his afterimage seems to linger. He lands a devastating blow to the fool's massive leg, following it up with a crushing uppercut beneath his chin. The brute's face is now streaming with blood. That single punch was sufficient to rattle his brain, and one of his knees slams into the ground. This was unimaginable. Cain didn't even register those punches. The crowd is just as shocked as everyone else, absolutely loving this completely unexpected turn of events. Meanwhile, Ghislain radiates an aura of confidence and power, claiming he hasn't even begun to get serious and wants to continue. This completely shatters the brute's delicate ego, causing his jaw to tighten as he charges at our hero yet again. But our hero just continues to weave left and right with ease. The dance of this battle is simply unbelievable. Even as the narrator, I can hardly keep pace with these divine movements, no matter what the brute attempts. Every single attack is countered and then overwhelmed, and in return, he is met with one devastating blow after another. As Cain contemplates his current predicament, he recalls how Ghislain once couldn't even meet his gaze, always bowing his head whenever Cain was present. But now, everything has been turned on its head. The giant continues to absorb punishment, an unending storm of attacks from our hero. He is serving as the perfect living punching bag. At a certain point, his entire body is a canvas of bruises. His face is so disfigured that even his own mother would disown him as her child. Ghislain seizes the brute by his hair, and as he gazes upon this stubborn fool, he feels a genuine sense of sorrow for his family. Count Logis had supported the Perdium house without fail, even as it teetered on the brink of utter ruin, simply because he was a dear friend of our hero's father. However, Ghislain can see that Cain is nothing like his father. The scene flashes back to several years prior, where we see Cain yelling at his own father for being excessively supportive of the Perdium house. Cain is furious, arguing that his father is wasting their wealth by repeatedly investing in a territory that is slowly dying. It has not even been a week since Logis returned home, but he is already preparing to depart again to aid Perdium. Cain implores his father not to leave, clearly angered by what he sees as his father's misplaced loyalty. But his father calmly, yet firmly, explains that he is doing all of this because they are friends, and there is no greater reason than that. In the present, looking at this brute, Ghislain balls up his fist, but shockingly, This is not a punch meant to destroy the brute's face. It is actually a hand of peace extended from our hero. This gesture of friendship is something none of us anticipate. And what is even more shocking is that Cain responds to this gesture and formally concedes defeat. Everyone is left utterly dumbfounded to see Cain admit his own defeat, and the referee immediately declares Ghislain the victor. Everyone from House Perdium is captivated to see the young master win, while Elena is quite pleased and overjoyed to see her brother at last claim victory. It is then that the hooded man storms over to the defeated Cain and begins to berate him. He demands to know how Cain could surrender so quickly, just because he was at a minor disadvantage. Cain does not reply. He simply turns his face away, stating that he is no longer participating in that game, since Cain has failed to eliminate Ghislain. The hooded man is unsure how he will explain this to his superiors. At that very moment, our hero also appears on the scene and decides to play a little game of his own with this fool. The hooded man has no idea what Ghislain is even contemplating, but we soon find out when our hero bellows at the top of his voice that this man right here has volunteered to pay for all the meat and ale for every single person gathered here. While the hooded villain is losing his composure, the crowd explodes in a chorus of pure joy at the prospect of receiving free food and drink. The hooded man quickly refutes this, telling Ghislain that he never consented to any such thing and demands that he retract his statement immediately. But our hero simply places a comforting hand on the man's shoulder and informs him that this is the price for losing the duel. And just so we're clear, it will not be taken from the wager. He tells him to be sure to add 2,000 gold to the initial bet of 1,000 gold. And if he attempts to flee, the repercussions will be dire. When Ghislain says this, he means every single word. The threatening image of our hero is instantly seared into the man's mind. Later, the following day, in Ghislain's chambers, we see Ghislain gazing at a large treasure chest, overflowing with shimmering gold coins. The sum of money he now possesses is actually quite substantial. To give you a sense of just how much it is, one could easily contract a small mercenary army with this amount. But it takes a great deal of time to build wealth. And those conspirators who want him eliminated will not wait for his power to grow. Therefore, he has only a very limited time to enact the business strategy he has formulated. It is then that Belinda and his sister approach him with contented smiles upon their faces. The way they are looking at him suggests they have some kind of ulterior motive concealed behind their cheerful expressions. He immediately asks why they have come, to which his little sister politely inquires how he intends to spend all of this money. Of course, Ghislain understands what she is implying, so he directly asks her if she would like some of it, to which the young lady replies that she was merely asking. Belinda then speaks up, stating that she has a very good idea of how he is going to spend it all. She is certain that since Lady Amelia's birthday is fast approaching, Ghislain must be intending to make a grand gesture, to purchase his fiancée an extravagant gift. But we all know that our hero is not thinking about this whatsoever. However, the mention of a fiancée catches Ghislain completely off guard. He literally cannot even recall if he even has a fiancée. The maid chuckles softly, thinking he must be feeling bashful. They believe he is feigning ignorance, because he is embarrassed that they've discovered his plan. Still, since Elena is aware that her brother has been rather absent-minded lately, she decides to remind him that they are speaking of Amelia, of the Rayford County. At last, the name sparks some memories in Ghislain's mind, but they're not exactly pleasant ones. You see, Amelia Rayford is known as a paragon of nobility, celebrated for her generous spirit and benevolent deeds. She is deeply beloved in her own territory, commanding the absolute loyalty of her subjects, regardless of their station in life. But Ghislain knows a different version of this tale. In his mind, she is not a revered noblewoman, but a vile traitor. Why? Because Amelia Rayford, who once seemed to be a shining example of nobility, would one day orchestrate a rebellion. She would become infamously known as the Witch of the North, allying herself with the Delphine Duchy to deliver the final, fatal blow to Perdium's existence. To Ghislain, she is no gentle betrothed, but the very woman who betrayed everything his family held dear. He then asks Belinda when his father is expected to return, to which she replies with some hesitation, saying perhaps in about a week. This is sufficient time for Ghislain. With an entire week at his disposal, he resolves to make a journey to Rayford County. Belinda is not sure why he is departing so soon, since it is not even Amelia's birthday yet. but our hero says he is going to collect some money from them. Later, we finally lay eyes upon the lady herself, Amelia Rayford. At first impression, she appears lifeless, but I cannot avert my gaze from her considerable assets. Regardless, she is in this village, where she is presenting a poor young girl with a pair of sandals. Amelia is apparently giving away her own personal sandals, so the little girl is unsure whether she should accept them. But Amelia reassures the reluctant child that, if any person must go barefoot in her domain, it ought to be her. She then orders her soldiers to provide food and lodging for them immediately, and the soldiers swiftly leap into action as she departs with her contingent of soldiers. All the common folk voice their deep gratitude. Later, we are in Rayford County, in Amelia's private garden, where we see this man cleansing her feet with such devotion that you might feel a pang of jealousy. He is immensely proud of the wonderful work she has done. This man is, in fact, Amelia's escort, Knight Bernaf. Amelia replies to him that her father had always demanded unquestioning loyalty from the people of his lands. But the common people will always follow the one who provides them warmth and keeps them well fed. The man then says that with this, she has captivated the hearts of the people, and that it will surely be advantageous in her future struggle. But it seems Amelia is not thinking along the same lines as him, so she quickly places her foot directly on his face like a cruel mistress. She interrogates him about what transpired in the duel against the supposed finest blade of the North, to which the man apologizes, claiming he lost intentionally to prevent any unwanted scrutiny. If he had emerged victorious, people might have begun to pay closer attention to her, and it is not yet the proper time for her to reveal her hidden fangs. He then kisses her feet with great fervor, while pledging his unwavering support and allegiance to her. But the lady believes this is only as it should be, since she has invested a great deal in raising him, and she would certainly never tolerate him being a weakling. She then begins to question him about the merchants. The knight assures her there is no cause for concern. With the Archia Merchant Guild, all of the supplies used for rebuilding the Forest of Beasts outpost, which was recently decimated by the orc attack in Perdium, are being procured through their own merchant guild. In effect, her merchants are siphoning all the financial aid that Count Rayford provides to Perdium each year. Furthermore, he is actively recruiting all the soldiers and knights deserting Perdium. Many of these soldiers are exceptional knights who have been hardened by countless battles against barbarian hordes. Essentially, her scheme to drain every resource from Perdium is a complete success. Thus far, the lady is pleased to hear this report, and, as she previously stated, she instructs him to preserve the facade of an ordinary merchant guild, and to be meticulous because she cannot allow their true nature to be revealed until they have completely consolidated their power. It is then that her butler arrives. The knight is annoyed to see the butler entering the garden without her permission, but the butler delivers a pressing message he has just received from the castle gates. Apparently, young Lord Ghislain Perdium has come to call upon her. Although we were informed he is her fiancé, she certainly does not appear even slightly pleased at the mention of his name. She questions the butler about the purpose of his visit, and the butler begins to perspire nervously when he reveals that Ghislain is here to discuss the merchant guild. Both the lady and her knight, Bernaf, are wide-eyed with shock upon hearing this. We then find ourselves in the reception room, where she is now seated across from our hero. Our hero sits with as much composure as he can muster and greets her in a relaxed manner. But the lady returns his greeting with an expression of pure disdain. She is clearly irritated that he arrived without any prior announcement, leading her to believe he still hasn't learned basic etiquette. Our hero reminds her that since her birthday is approaching, he thought he would present her with a gift beforehand. He places a single flower on the table and explains that he acquired it from a merchant guild in the vicinity. He notes that its aroma is quite pleasant, and that he intends to purchase flowers from there in the future. If his memory is correct, the merchant guild is named Archium. Of course, the lady understands immediately where he is leading this conversation, but she feigns ignorance and says she does not understand what he is trying to suggest. Now that she has accepted his gift, she declares she will take her leave and starts to walk away. But it is then that our hero speaks her name with a grave expression on his face. He commands her to sit back down. The girl immediately senses the immense pressure Ghislain is now radiating. What disturbs her the most is how such a menacing pressure could be, emanating from a boy who used a stutter and could barely speak. Whenever he was in her presence, Our hero then decides to cut to the chase and demands payment, around 10,000 gold coins. Not unexpectedly, she is not pleased with the idea of him appearing out of the blue and demanding such a vast sum from his own betrothed. She wonders if he has come here on his father's orders. But Ghislain states that his father is not involved in this matter. Besides, he is already aware that she has no intention of marrying him anyway. He is sure that she might become the ruler of this territory, considering all her preparations. He subtly threatens her that, if news of her secretly amassing power were to spread in Rayford, she could very well lose the succession contest. This incites her anger. Of course, with a murderous glare, she warns him not to even think about something like that, not even in jest. To which our hero assures her that he will protect her secret for now. But of course, he might not be able to keep his promise if he departs this room empty-handed. But the lady remains defiant with her words, because she has already devised a plan to handle Ghislain. She quickly summons her knight, Bernaf, and that foot worshipper promptly enters the room. The knight does not forget his courtesies and immediately greets Lord Ghislain. Meanwhile, if we delve into Ghislain's thoughts, we learn that this man has always remained by Amelia's side, and he is a formidable individual, with the potential to rival the finest blade of the North. At the moment, our hero quickly reminds the lady that if she attempts to kill him here, a war could very well erupt. He asks her if she truly has the luxury to be fighting wars when a succession ceremony is so imminent. But Amelia has already considered this. A deranged intruder stormed in, caused mayhem, and was slain by her loyal escort knight. That is the story the world will be told about his death. With that plan firmly in mind, she does not hesitate to order her knight to eliminate this nuisance. The foot worshipper is more than willing to obey her command and swiftly draws his sword. But our hero is not about to take this lying down either. If that is how she wishes to play this game, then he has no choice but to get a little serious himself. The stage has been set for yet another legendary duel between two masters of their craft. So grab your popcorn and prepare yourselves for what is to come. But alas, as much as we would all love to see an honorable fight between two warriors, this worthless knight has other schemes in mind. Suddenly, Ghislain detects a faint sound behind him, and before he can turn, an assassin bursts forth from an empty suit of armor and plunges a blade directly through the sofa in an attempt to impale our hero along with it. But this coward was too slow, and our hero just tumbles to the floor, kicks the coward hard, and sends him flying out the window. The lady and that fool stand there in shock, because they did not anticipate our hero reacting with such skill. Ghislain voices his contempt for this with feigning civility, while orchestrating a cowardly ambush. He then instantly lunges toward the knight, and they both clash in a storm of steel. Our hero interrogates this worthless knight, demanding to know if Rayford has forgotten the code of chivalry. The knight offers his apologies, but reminds our hero that he was the one who was disrespectful by showing up uninvited and disturbing the lady with his baseless accusations. The two battle toe-to-toe, doing their utmost to land a hit on the other first. But it seems our hero has the advantage. With his demon-like reflexes, he even manages to force this fool back with a single kick. This knight clearly underestimated our hero, assuming he was all bluster with no real talent to support. But now, he is learning the hard way that our hero is no amateur. Amelia, on the other hand, is losing her composure watching her knight being bested by this upstart. She menacingly commands that he end the battle immediately and bring her this upstart's head if he truly considers himself her sworn knight. The foot worshipper decides to get a little more serious, because this has now become a matter of his mistress's honor, and he refuses to let her down. He audaciously tells our hero to come at him. Our hero maintains that confident smirk on his face, mocking how a mere escort knight dares to order him around. But now that this knight is begging for it, Ghislain is more than prepared to give this fool precisely what he's asking for. The two once again engage in a lethal dance of blades. But this time, the knight is not holding back in the slightest. He even manages to graze Ghislain's cheek with a shallow cut. Both of them are moving so fast, it is impossible to follow their actions. All they leave behind are shimmering after-images of themselves. Amelia, on the other hand, is growing increasingly agitated and impatient, watching Ghislain fight in this manner. She cannot believe how a boy who was once known as a worthless punk is now battling her own knight, Bernaf, on completely even ground. The fight itself is unbelievably close, and if you even blink, you'll miss it. Both warriors are far too quick, When our hero tries to land a hit on this fool, he evades, and when this fool tries to land a hit on our hero, he also evades. This back and forth continues without a moment's pause. Ghislain then attempts to use the same move he did previously, but this time he is slammed violently to the floor. While he is momentarily stunned, the knight charges at him with his blade in hand, but Ghislain instantly recovers, executing a series of breathtaking acrobatic feats before landing perfectly on his feet once more. By now, Ghislain has deduced that this man is withstanding his attacks by reinforcing himself with mana. On the other hand, the knight is also compelled to admit that Ghislain is completely different from what they have been told about him. The way he wields his sword does not appear to be something taught in a systematic fashion. It seems more as if he acquired his skills through actual combat. The knight asks if Ghislain has perhaps battled barbarians so frequently that he has unconsciously adopted their combat style. He believes that such a method might be effective on a chaotic battlefield, but claims it will not be effective against him this time. The knight swears he will end this now. Ghislain also knows that this is not going to be an easy fight. The precise, narrow thrusts of the blade, repeatedly aiming for his head, can disrupt one's sense of range and rhythm. And at such close quarters, the difference in the opponent's build makes it difficult to defeat this fool with just pure technique. In the first place, this knight was not an adversary Ghislain should have challenged. Yet, it's basically the equivalent of trying to beat a final boss with level 1 gear. But alas, Ghislain didn't have enough time to prepare for all of that, so he decides to elevate the fight to the next level. He materializes a mana thread, which zips past the knight's ear. Before the knight can even comprehend what is happening, our hero yanks a sword from behind him, striking the fool hard on the back of his head. Then, Ghislain follows up with a powerful kick to the knight's face. Bernaf momentarily loses consciousness after being struck twice on his head, leaving the spider lady in utter disbelief. Our hero then soars into the air and comes plummeting down, but the knight swiftly throws him aside with a powerful shove of his own body. Bernaf urgently tells his mistress to flee from here because he can no longer ensure her safety at this point, and from this moment forward, he pledges to give it his absolute all, warning her that she might be caught in the ensuing destruction. Ghislain is also fired up for this confrontation because he has not encountered such a thrilling adversary in a very long time. Meanwhile, Amelia is sprinting down the hallway with her cat, fearing for her life. She looks visibly enraged because how dare our hero subject her to such a humiliation? She has no idea who could be the fool who leaked information about the Merchant Guild to Ghislain. There is no way he could have known about it in such detail, at least not without assistance. The rumors about him killing orcs, defending his younger sister from assassins, and even vanquishing the heir of Logis. Judging by that fool's past, she had assumed it must have been either pure luck or wildly exaggerated reports. But now, she is forced to concede that he may have truly improved. She then sees that all of her guards are gone, which angers her even further. But she soon discovers all the soldiers lying scattered on the floor, and the one who defeated them is none other than Belinda. Amelia is shocked to see Perdium's personal mate, and before she can even process it, Belinda presses a cold dagger directly against her throat. It is then that Belinda spies the spider hanging from her face. She plucks the small creature into her hand and expresses her great dislike for this thing. Belinda then reminds this villainous lady that she remembers the day of the engagement ceremony, where she overheard the discussion between Count Rayford and the Lord of Perdium. She apparently heard that all of Amelia's own siblings teased her for keeping creepy spiders around her. So she bred the spiders herself and enacted her own revenge. Belinda is not sure if that was perhaps a way of overcoming her trauma or a demonstration of her own will. Belinda then apologizes if this might seem unkind, but she reminds Amelia that it does not befit her. With that, she crushes the spider beneath her heel. After brutally squashing the spider, Belinda requests that this witch cooperate with her just a little. But before we can discover what kind of request Belinda intends to make, we are returned to the battle between the boys, and it appears the knight has begun to radiate some serious, menacing power already. The atmosphere has become heavy, and the immense amount of mana is genuinely making our hero quite wary. The knight is truly enraged that our hero is not treating him seriously, and it called him a thrilling adversary before, because that sounds almost like something a common mercenary would say. He despises the very thought that someone so lowly and so unserious as our hero dares to call himself a nobleman, and attempts to stand as an equal to Amelia. Well, of course, our hero is a nobleman, and he doesn't believe this is something a simple escort knight like himself should be saying. Bernaf takes his first step, and they begin clashing their blades. He is absolutely furious, because he believes Ghislain is mocking the entire nobility. He continues to unleash one attack after another. Our hero is impressed that this fool is advancing with such power and ferocity. But Ghislain has also had enough of this. He responds with equally ferocious swordsmanship. This time, the knight is definitely not holding back. With a single, powerful swing, he forces our hero backward, then swiftly follows up with another attack to land a critical blow. Time seems to stop as the final attack from that fool is launched, and blood erupts as the blade cuts the shoulder of our hero. Bernaf, on the other hand, is completely dumbfounded that this fool braced himself for the wound and used his own shoulder to deflect the blade. Our hero then immediately counterattacks, forcing the stunned knight backward just a little. But Bernaf swiftly lands a kick on our hero while taunting him, saying this is the gulf between him and a mere upstart who wields his blade simply for amusement. The kick sends Ghislain staggering backward, but it is still not enough to defeat him. He still finds this entire confrontation quite thrilling. With overwhelming speed, range, and a relentless assault, the knight dictates the rhythm of the battle. Any attempt to counter him at close range with grapple is immediately nullified in a deadlock of blades. It appears as though their swords are fused together, making the knight believe they cannot be separated. With Ghislain's current mana levels, he cannot overcome the knight's raw power, but he is playing a much longer game. Knowing that the knight has not yet seen the trump card, our hero has hidden up his sleeve, which is Ghislain's one-of-a-kind mana cultivation art. In a flash, Ghislain activates his third core and completely alters the flow of the battle. One devastating strike is sufficient to send the sword flying from the knight's grasp, leaving him completely stunned. The only thought in Bernaf's mind is how this boy can unleash such explosive mana in the heat of battle. With Bernaf now completely vulnerable, Ghislain places his blade against the knight's throat, paralyzing him completely. At that very moment, Belinda drags Amelia back onto the scene as well. The once arrogant lady is now literally in tears and quickly agrees to pay the 10,000 gold, begging them to simply disappear from her presence afterward. While Ghislain is pleased to have acquired what he came for, he is also annoyed that it had to resort to this. It would have been much simpler if she had just cooperated earlier. In any case, he lowers his sword and approaches Amelia to deliver some more bad news. The price has just been raised to 20,000 gold. In the aftermath, Amelia's entire chamber is in utter chaos. She is hurling objects around in a fit of rage. Not only did her knight suffer defeat, bathed in defeat, the knight offers a pathetic apology, confessing the harsh truth about Ghislain. The man was a monster whose power wildly surpassed any of the intel they had. He takes full responsibility for his failure, admitting his gross miscalculation of the man's true capabilities. Ghislain, it turned out, wielded a mana reserve that dwarfed even a high-ranking knight. This revelation does nothing to soothe Amelia's boiling rage. So when Bernaf dares to ask about reporting this disaster to the Delphin Duchy, her fury erupts in a vicious slap across his face. She seizes him violently by the collar, incandescent with rage at his utterly foolish words. It's clear she lives in absolute terror of Duke Delphin, because if word of this day's humiliation ever reaches his ears, she understands that her life is forfeit. This clandestine alliance she forged with Duke Delphine, a treacherous act hidden from her own father, was built on a secret pact made with the Duke himself. He vowed to back her treacherous rebellion, and in return, she was to be his pawn in bringing Perdium to its knees. If this treasonous pact were ever to be exposed, her own siblings would not hesitate to end her. If our protagonist already knows the Merchant Guild's dark secret, then Amelia realizes with dawning horror he might also know of her pact with the Duke. A chilling certainty grips her. He must be silenced. She will stop at nothing to eliminate that godforsaken bastard. The knight bows his head, accepting his new orders. She then demands to know the extent of Gislin's injuries, to which he reports that he successfully landed numerous shallow wounds across his body, with a single debilitating strike to his shoulder. Furthermore, due to the explosive surge of mana Gislin unleashed, he'll be severely weakened and vulnerable for a considerable time, since their goal is to erase him completely, leaving behind not a single clue. They can't risk using knights from their own domain. Amelia had already anticipated this complication. It is why she maintained a secret force, a shadow unit trained specifically for these dirty operations. It appears even her loyal Burnaf is unaware of these assassins, so she whispers to him their chilling moniker, the Wildcats. This shadowy cabal is composed of orphans of war, the masterless, the nameless, the ghosts of society. Only the most gifted, naturally born killers are chosen for their ranks. They are infamously known as the Wildcat Traffickers. She orders her knight to a secret location she marks on the map, with instructions to mobilize a dozen or so of these specters. Only those who are masters of wielding mana. The strategic choice for their ambush point clicks instantly for Bernaf. You see, the chosen ravine is the sole choke point on the road from Rayford territory to Perdia. It's the perfect killing ground to handle matters quietly. The region is desolate and the landscape unforgivingly tight. With his orders clear, Bernaf moves to set the deadly plan in motion. This time, Amelia's resolve is absolute. She will make our hero pay dearly for the humiliation he inflicted upon her. Meanwhile, Gislin has already departed from Amelia's treacherous palace. Within his carriage, he diligently wraps his wounded body in fresh bandages. We see that the elder Fergus and the loyal Belinda are with him. They inquire anxiously about his condition, and he coolly assures them it is nothing to be concerned about. The wounds he sustained are merely superficial. It's a small price to pay considering he pushes limits to the absolute edge. Ghislaine is simply gratified that the 20,000 gold he extorted from Amelia is more than enough to establish the funds to resurrect his territory. That colossal sum is equivalent to several years of grueling labor. Naturally, it would have been ideal if he could have eliminated Amelia as well, but such an act would have plunged them into an inescapable war. He cannot afford to jeopardize the security of his people over a fleeting emotional impulse. Perdium is already stretched thin dealing with the northern barbarians. Thus, it's far more prudent to retreat silently without escalating the conflict. The very fact that he holds the secret of the Arxium Merchant Guild is already a crushing weight placed upon Amelia's shoulders. Belinda gazes upon him with deeply worried eyes and asks if this chaotic outcome was all part of his grand design. She recalls his earlier command for her to neutralize the guards, the moment she detected the sounds of battle from within, and he also ordered her to seize Lady Amelia as a hostage. The instant she emerged from that chamber, Ghislaine confirms her recollection was perfectly accurate. Just then, a searing pain lances through him, and he coughs a spray of blood. It's the violent backlash from forcibly unlocking his third mana core. Although his state is vastly improved compared to the last time, it would be a great hindrance to endure this agony. Each and every time he unleashes his true power, he must discover a method to rapidly augment his mana reserves. Belinda's hand shoots out, grasping his, instantly sensing the chaotic turbulence within his body's energy flow. She produces a fine needle and begins piercing the back of his hand. With a speed that defies the eye, Ghislaine finds the process shockingly soothing. Once her work is complete, he breathes out a dark wisp of smoke, a wave of immense relief washing over him. He can physically feel his tangled mana pathways beginning to clear. But what is truly staggering is the technique she just performed on him. It's a feat impossible without a profound mastery of mana manipulation. It makes a certain kind of sense that Belinda possesses such skills, given it was his own mother who brought her to the palace years ago. Yet the profound question still hangs in the air. Who in the world is she? Ghislaine has absolutely no idea. Why would such a masterful individual be content serving as a head made in this backwater fiefdom? Regardless, having as many powerful allies as possible on his side is a blessing. After all, the foes he has faced thus far are merely a prelude to the coming storm. It is then that Belinda finally speaks, swearing that she will assist him in any endeavor, because her faith in him is absolute and unconditional. However, she demands to know why he extorted such a staggering sum of money from Lady Amelia. Ghislain states simply that he required the funds, and since Amelia was the wealthiest target he could think of, he chose to relieve her of her excess coin. Both of his retainers are completely flabbergasted by this answer. They find it truly bizarre that he shattered his engagement just for a sack of gold. Because of this reckless act, he now faces certain doom. Once Count Rayfeld learns of the news, this assessment brings a smirk to Ghislain's face. He turns to her and asks rhetorically if she truly places her trust in him. Belinda barely suppresses her irritation at him, repeating the question, when she had just affirmed her unwavering loyalty. Since her faith is absolute, she is certain he will at least divulge his intentions for the money. Ghislain's answer is a mere 3 words: the forest of beasts. That single, cryptic phrase renders her utterly silent and stunned. Our boy, on the other hand, continues, revealing his grand scheme to use the funds to pioneer the untamed forest of beasts. The old man, Fergus, nearly leaps from his own skin at the declaration. He hastily reminds Ghislain that development of that cursed forest has been attempted since his great-grandfather's era, but every single attempt has ended in failure. Ghislain calmly reminds the old man of a certain request he made. The steward's eyes widen as he understands precisely what Ghislain implies, but he still hesitates, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Finally, he concedes that the individual Ghislain tasked him to find is, in fact, at the specified location. However, the old man questions the wisdom of even approaching such a person. But Ghislain's mind is a fortress of resolve. He will meet this man at any cost. Belinda, however, vehemently objects, insisting they must return home immediately. She argues that in his current weakened state, Ghislain has no business wandering these dangerous lands. Despite her fervent protests, Ghislain lays out the grim reality of their situation. He asks if she truly believes Amelia would let them depart in peace after the monumental humiliation they just inflicted upon her. Knowing her venomous personality, he is absolutely certain she will send assassins to silence him for good. To guarantee her treacherous secret alliance with Duke Delphine remains forever buried, Belinda tries to flex her own power, confidently promising her young master that she can effortlessly dispatch any foe who dares cross their path. Besides, they also have the stalwart old man Fergus, their loyal knight, by their side. Though Ghislain has no doubt Belinda is a formidable force, he knows that is not the role she is meant to play. What he requires now is a vanguard, a living shield, and their quest to recruit this legend was already underway. Their journey culminates at a lonely shack, isolated from the world. The carriage driver raps his knuckles against the wooden door, but only silence answers. The house feels utterly desolate and abandoned, but Fergus confirms this is, without a doubt, the address they see. At long last, a presence stirs from within the shack. A hulking figure emerges, his face a wild forest of hair. He immediately growls, demanding the identity of his unwelcome visitors, while the others are visibly unnerved by this beast of a man. My guy's expression remains an unreadable mask of calm. Belinda even whispers to him, doubting if this disheveled man is truly the one they've sought. She cannot imagine this recluse possessing any real combat prowess, let alone being able to survive the storm that is about to break. But Ghislain confirms with unwavering certainty that this is precisely the man they have come to find. The giant of a man glares at the young noble and bluntly tells him to cease wasting his breath and depart. That is when my guy addresses him directly by his true, legendary title, the former captain of the Ratatosk mercenaries, Gillian. The old man's entire demeanor shifts at the mention of his past glory. As he turns back to face them, Ghislain extends a hand in a gesture of profound respect, formally inviting him to join their cause. Both the old steward and the carriage driver are absolutely stunned to hear the name Ratatosk mercenaries spoken aloud. You see, the Ratatosk were not just mercenaries. They were a force of nature, a legend. A company comprised solely of master warriors, each one skilled with a multitude of deadly weapons. Though their company is now a thing of the past, their fearsome reputation endures, a name whispered in awe by knights in the most distant kingdoms. And the captain who led that legendary band of killers was none other than Gillian. That is the man Ghislain has traveled all this way to recruit. In response, The old man hurls his axe with deadly intent, but my guy merely tilts his head and the lethal weapon whistles past his ear. Instantly, his entire retinue explodes into a defensive formation. They swiftly form a protective circle around their young master, weapons drawn, braced for the battle that seems imminent. But Jillian's demeanor remains all business. He has no desire to engage in pointless theatrics. He bluntly demands to know the purpose of Ghislaine's visit. Belinda moves to shield our guy, convinced that this man is nothing but a raving lunatic. But Ghislaine cuts straight to the heart of the matter. He utters only 2 words, the eternal punishment, and then he makes a bold declaration. He knows the cure for the supposedly incurable malady that afflicts the captain's own daughter. Well, that statement is more than enough to capture Jillian's undivided attention. It seems his daughter suffers a condition that brings a raging fever, causes her to violently cough up blood, and makes crimson marks bloom like cursed flowers upon her skin. The sight of her agony, so similar to a prisoner enduring endless torment, is what gave this hopeless disease its terrifying name, the eternal punishment. Finally, our eyes fall upon the girl in question. She unleashes a soul-shattering scream of pure agony, and the mercenary captain bolts back inside to tend to his child. Rachel. Ghislaine can see that her fate is not yet sealed. In his past life, our hero had attempted to find and recruit Jillian, but the legendary warrior had already taken his own life, consumed by grief shortly after his daughter succumbed to the illness. Judging by the squalor of this desolate shack, it is painfully obvious that every last coin of Jillian's fortune was exhausted in a desperate attempt to find a cure. Now, all that remains are his legendary weapons. The poor child cries out, desperately pleading with her father, wailing that the pain is unbearable and she cannot endure it any longer. Witnessing her torment, Ghislaine knows he must act immediately. He announces to Jillian that he will begin the treatment at once. But Belinda instantly intervenes, attempting to halt him before he can take another step forward. She has no idea what he believes he is about to attempt, but she knows for a fact this isn't a problem raw power can solve. This curse is so potent that even the most powerful priests failed to cure it. They branded it a divine punishment from the gods for a very good reason. She doubts there is anything in this world he can do, but my guy simply brushes her hand from his shoulder and makes it clear he can save her. He reminds Belinda that since she swore she trusted him completely, now is the time to honor those very words. With that declaration, it seems Belinda has no ground left to stand on. He then presses a piece of paper into her hands, listing the required herbs. He commands her to return swiftly with the ingredients. As her eyes scan the list of components, she is left momentarily breathless with shock. The reason our protagonist knows all this is simple. For a wandering mercenary without the comfort of a home, knowledge is the sharpest weapon, the key to survival itself. You see, the eternal punishment may be incurable in this present time, but its cure will be discovered in the not-so-distant future. Back in his old life, the news became a massive sensation, primarily because the method of cure was astonishingly simple. Because of that, my guy remembers the recipe perfectly. The only significant obstacle is the astronomical price of the ingredients, and one of them is an exceptionally rare herb known as Fairy's Blessing. Now that he possesses the Fairy's Blessing and the other vital herbs, he meticulously chops them, packing them into a flask, and pours in a high-proof distilled spirit over the mixture. He shakes it vigorously, ensuring a perfect blend, and allows the concoction to steep for a short time. Once it is ready, he adds the final components, stirs them into the potion, and completes his work. With that, the legendary remedy is finally complete. He presents the flask to the desperate Jillian and instructs him to have his daughter consume it. Since Jillian has absolutely nothing left to lose, he immediately tips the miraculous medicine down his daughter's throat. The instant the liquid touches her stomach, the impossible begins to happen before their very eyes. Her horribly bruised and reddened skin begins to revert to normal, leaving every single person in the room completely speechless. It is simply beyond belief. No one, least of all the despairing Jillian, expected the cure to work. But Ghislaine had been supremely confident in the outcome. Jillian whirls on him, demanding to know how he knew of this cure, when even the divine power of the gods proved useless against it. To this, Ghislain explains that the divine arts of priests are not truly omnipotent. They merely amplify the body's own life force and supercharge its natural regenerative capabilities, helping the body combat the invading illness. But that is a world away from providing a fundamental cure. The massive man's hands tremble uncontrollably as he reaches for our boy, asking with a broken voice if his daughter will truly be saved. And Ghislain gives the desperate father the answer he has been praying for. He assures Jillian that while it will take several months, he can guarantee that his daughter will make a full and complete recovery. The warrior's eyes widen with sheer, unadulterated disbelief. As powerful and immense as he is, he collapses to his knees and bows his head to the ground, humbly asking what price our hero could possibly demand in return. Since Ghislain journeyed all this way, there must be a significant reason for his presence. However, the old warrior tells him frankly that he has nothing left to offer, save for his own worthless, battle-scarred body. If Ghislain demands that he become his loyal dog, then so be it. He will obey every command and be his willing slave. But Ghislain makes it perfectly clear he does not need a slave. What he needs is Jillian, the legendary captain of the Ratatosk mercenaries. When the old warrior looks up, he is shocked to see the unmistakable fire of a true leader in those eyes. Without a word, Jillian rises to his feet, grabs his axe, and slices off his long, binding ponytail. Now, he looks like an absolute titan of a man, radiating a palpable aura of raw power and unshakable confidence. He asks if any others have arrived here besides him and his party. Ghislain confirms that it is only himself and his 3 companions. The man then questions if there is anyone who bears a grudge against him, to which Ghislain coolly replies that indeed there is, and there will undoubtedly be many more in the future. With that settled, the giant warrior grabs his deadly harpoon, and after infusing it with his own potent mana, he hurls it with a speed that defies belief. The harpoon rips straight through the wall of his hut and into the dark forest. Moments later, as he yanks the heavy rope back, the prey impaled on the harpoon is revealed. A man skewered through by its vicious barbs. Jillian grabs the dying intruder with one colossal hand, his grip like a vice of solid steel, and demands to know who sent him. The spy, however, seems far more concerned with how Jillian could possibly have known he was concealed in the woods. Turning to our boy, Jillian asks what he desires done with this pitiful assassin. Ghislain calmly states that he already knows who dispatched the man, but he would rather not stain his blade on such a momentous day. Still, he admits it appears he may not have a choice in the matter. That is when Jillian halts him from drawing his sword and promises to handle the disposal of this intruder himself. With that declaration, Jillian tightens his monstrous grip, and the final, agonized screams of the spy echo through the silent forest. Once the bloody deed is done, the mercenary bows respectfully to his new master. Meanwhile, Belinda is visibly disturbed by the scene. Witnessing Jillian kill with such cold, effortless efficiency, without a single shred of hesitation, leaves her deeply shaken. She cannot possibly fathom why the young master would recruit such a terrifyingly dangerous man. The giant warrior, on the other hand, falls once more to his knees and swears an unbreakable oath that from this day forward, his life belongs to his savior, Ghislain. In response, our boy offers a confident, knowing smile, eager to begin their work together. The scene shifts dramatically to a solitary hut in the heart of a fetid swamp. Inside, the wildcat traffickers are in a state of utter disarray. A report has just come in that their reconnaissance unit has been annihilated. It is then that their senior member speaks, his voice a low growl, demanding that everyone calm themselves. This man is Virgo, the fearsome captain of this assassination squad. Virgo declares that according to Bernaf's own intelligence report, Ghislain should not have even been capable of locating their scout unit, let alone having the power to eliminate them. He wonders aloud if his unit was simply incompetent or if their intel was fatally flawed. It is then the scout reports that the legendary Jillian has joined Ghislain's ranks. The captain's face contorts with absolute rage. He lunges, grabbing the scout by the throat and furiously demanding confirmation. The terrified man can barely choke out response, confirming once more that he witnessed it with his own 2 eyes. Virgo is both enraged and intrigued by this development, because he never, in his wildest dreams, imagined that Giant would return to the world of killing. And apparently, it seems that Virgo himself was once a member of the legendary Ratatosk mercenaries. The scene transitions back to our hero's party, where this time, The mighty Jillian is steering the carriage. Inside, Belinda finds herself practically suffocated, buried under the mountain of weaponry loaded into the carriage. She mutters to herself, wondering if Jillian truly needed to bring his entire armory. Couldn't he have been satisfied with just a sword or two? She wonders if he's not a warrior, but some kind of traveling arms merchant. In the second carriage, Fergus and Ricardo serve as the vigilant rearguard, maintaining a watchful eye on their back trail. Meanwhile, our boy tries to placate the exasperated Belinda, assuring her that Jillian will undoubtedly put every last one of these weapons to good use, so she will simply have to tolerate it for the time being. Their highest priority is escaping this treacherous choke point alive. The lady then brings up the assassin they captured earlier, stating her certainty that he must have been sent by the vengeful Amelia. She finds this deeply disturbing because the mask the spy wore was the unmistakable symbol of the notorious wildcat traffickers, a powerful and ruthless guild operating within Rayford. Their primary trades consist of smuggling, assassination, narcotics, and even human trafficking. Among their other ventures, they're vile scum who handle all manner of disgusting work. Their ranks are filled with many highly skilled former mercenaries, making them a shadowy organization with truly formidable combat strength. Ghislaine is quite taken aback that Belinda possesses such deep knowledge, especially considering she rarely ever leaves the confines of the castle. In response, she cryptically states that she heard a great deal about them long before she began her service here, so he must remain on high alert. Ghislaine is warmed by her genuine concern, noting just how deeply she cares for his well-being. He confidently reassures her that he will be perfectly fine, because now they have the mighty Jillian on their side. Suddenly, the very earth beneath them begins to roil and shift. Two deadly assassins burst forth and begin shadowing their carriage from both sides of the ravine. In the next instant, they erupt from the sand, aiming to strike down Jillian. But this jigachad of a man grabs a heavy sword in one hand and a brutal axe in the other, effortlessly parrying both of the assassins' strikes in the same moment. Not only does he block their attacks, but he twists his weapons with such blinding speed that the assassins' arms are brutally torn from their sockets. And with his very next motion, Jillian cleaves through both of them as if they were made of paper. More of these masked figures emerge, quickly triggering the traps they had laid. Massive, sharpened logs begin to rain down upon them, but before they can be crushed into oblivion, Jillian expertly seizes control of the reins. He yanks hard on the bridle, and the powerful horses screech to a halt. In a matter of mere seconds, the entire area is swarming with these grotesque assassins, all of them wielding blades that are fused directly into their hands. It is then that Virgo calls out to Jillian, addressing him as the disgraced former captain of the Ratatosk mercenaries. He spits the word coward for disbanding their entire legendary group, all for the sake of his dying daughter. Jillian does not seem to appreciate the accusations. This unknown cretin is hurling in his direction. Virgo continues his tirade, screaming that after the company was dissolved, he was forced to live a pathetic existence he never desired. He snarls at Jillian not to feign ignorance, as if he couldn't possibly recall one of his own former comrades. It seems that Jillian genuinely does not, in fact, remember this grotesque man. But Virgo is convinced that he is merely pretending to be a fool. But Virgo is eagerly looking forward to forcing Jillian to remember his old battlefield brethren, and he gives the signal for his underlings to charge forward. Our boy asks if he should intervene and offer his assistance, but Jillian simply replies that everything is under control. These pathetic bastards clearly have a personal vendetta against him, so he assures Ghislaine that there is no need for him to dirty his hands. The moment those wretched assassins get close enough to try and pierce Jillian with their crude blades, this titan of a man cuts through them as if they were vegetables. A few more of them charge in from the opposite direction, but Jillian braces himself and brutally cuts down the first one in line. When the second one makes his move to attack, he too has his weaponized hands torn from his body. Virgo, observing this slaughter from the sidelines, had fully anticipated this very outcome. After all, Jillian held the esteemed position of captain for a damn good reason, since direct frontal assaults are utterly useless against this beast of a man. Virgo commands his forces to divide into two separate groups and to assault him simultaneously from both sides. But Jillian immediately leaps atop his powerful steed, his mighty axe in hand, charging headlong at these bastards. With a single, devastating swing of his axe, he completely obliterates them, not allowing a single one to get close, seeing no possible way to get any nearer. The men then change their tactics and decide to target his horse first, but they stand absolutely no chance. Jillian is swinging his axe like a human blender, mowing down every single person in his path, leaving the ground a sickening, bloody mess. Finally, Virgo himself leaps into the fray, but Jillian effortlessly safeguards himself with his massive shield. Virgo, seething with a venomous rage since Jillian destroyed his life, screams that he will not allow him to shatter his new plans as well. For that unforgivable sin, Jillian must die. The bastard quickly and brutally kills the horse Jillian was riding, but our big guy leaps from its back, completely unharmed. Virgo wastes not a single second and comes charging in with his blade, but the old warrior easily blocks the direct assault with his axe. In the midst of their violent clash, he reminds this pathetic excuse for a man that he is no longer the captain of the Ratatosk mercenaries. One soul-crushing blow from our old hero leaves this sucker reeling in pain, and Jillian proceeds to hurl him away with contemptuous ease. Virgo is in a state of utter ruin after just a single strike. Blood pours from his mouth as he demands to know who the captain is, if it is no longer him. In response, Jillian begins to channel his immense mana, calmly declaring that he has cast aside his past self. He is now nothing more than the young Lord Gislin's loyal subordinate. This revelation leaves Virgo completely and utterly bamboozled. He furiously charges forward like a man possessed, realizing that this bastard is acting so incredibly nonchalant after having single-handedly destroyed his life. The furious exchange of blows resumes once more, both warriors pushing themselves to their absolute limits to overpower the other. But it is painfully clear that the one who is truly struggling is Virgo, who is fighting only on the fuel of his sheer frustration. He reminds Jillian again that their mercenary company was completely disbanded after he abandoned them, and thanks to Jillian's selfish decision, Virgo lost all of his power and was forced to live a disgraceful life merely to survive. The old warrior offers no response to Virgo's bitter words. Instead, he continues to deliver strike after devastating strike, relentlessly hammering away at Virgo's defenses. But at last, Virgo manages to render the old man's shield useless. With a single powerful kick, Virgo makes it clear that he had been willing to sacrifice his entire existence to make the Ratatosk mercenaries the greatest in all of history. But Jillian callously threw it all away, only to wind up as a mere pawn for some spoiled, arrogant noble. For that unforgivable betrayal, Virgo is not certain he can ever forgive it. He at last unleashes his deadly ninja daggers, but the old warrior simply swings his axe and deflects 3 of the deadly blades. Just then, Virgo charges in, a dagger clutched in his hand, but it zips past Jillian as their brutal clash continues. No matter how powerful Jillian may have once been, Virgo is supremely confident that he is no longer as mighty as he once was, back when he was captain just a few short years ago. While Jillian squandered his time trying to cure his pathetic daughter, Virgo is gratified that he subjected himself to countless brutal battles in order to grow even stronger. He's quite certain this Walmart version of Zeus is no match for him now. Virgo swiftly retrieves the 3 daggers from the ground and hurls them directly at Jillian. But the GigaChat, Jillian, catches them with his bare hand as if they were nothing more than toys. When Virgo charges in again, Jillian swings his axe once more. Virgo dodges the blow, coming mere inches from the old man's skull. Jillian swiftly imbues his hand with mana and stops the dagger cold in midair. He then speaks to the astonished Virgo, asking if this was truly the only reason he had for seeking his vengeance. Virgo is completely caught off guard after witnessing Jillian channel his mana just to intercept the dagger. It does not take him long to realize that Jillian had not been displaying his true terrifying strength. Up until this very moment, before Virgo could even react, Jillian's axe smashes brutally into his face, sending him hurtling into a nearby tree with tremendous force. The old man approaches, his voice calm yet unyielding, as he questions why Virgo had not sought him out sooner, if all he truly desired was his revenge. Virgo sneers and confesses that he had, in fact, visited Jillian's old home. But there was no sign of the legendary Ratatosk, Mercenary's captain. All that remained was a feeble, broken old man, far too weak to even be worthy of killing. The thought that the man Virgo had once idolized was now gone was a brutal and devastating blow. Jillian can clearly see the warrior's spirit in Virgo, so he tosses his own sword to him and unsheathes his other, larger blade. He reminds Virgo of how he is now bound to the will of another. But just for this one moment, he is prepared to show his former comrade the highest possible level of respect as the captain of the legendary Ratatosk mercenaries. For Virgo, this moment feels like a dream finally come true. He swiftly grabs the offered dagger and launches himself back into the battle. The two warriors clash with all of their remaining might, their weapons exchanging blows at such a blistering speed that only sparks fly. They appear to be perfectly and evenly matched, standing on completely equal footing until Jillian strikes. He thrusts his blade deep into Virgo's ribs with brutal, unforgiving force. Despite the savage and mortal blow, Virgo refuses to surrender. He pushes forward and desperately retaliates with a strike of his own. But his final, desperate attack is completely futile, and Jillian is on the verge of severing Virgo's head from his shoulders. In that final, fleeting moment, Jillian speaks. He promises his fallen comrade that he will forever remember him as the 5th unit commander of the legendary Ratatosk mercenaries, Virgo Villanos. For Virgo, it is a profoundly heartwarming moment. To be recognized at last by the captain of the Ratatosk mercenaries fills his dying heart with immense pride. He smiles one final time before Jillian's sword ends the life of this proud and tragic warrior. Once the bloody battle is officially concluded, Jillian stoops and retrieves the dagger his fallen comrade was wielding. Ghislain also emerges from the safety of the carriage with Belinda, and the first thing they are greeted by is the absolute carnage of limbs and dead bodies strewn about. Belinda remarks how they could easily acquire a significant amount of money by methodically looting all of these dead bodies. Jillian bows his head deeply in apology for the unnecessary and bloody delays. But our boy assures him that there is absolutely no need to worry about it. He then cannot help but acknowledge just how truly exceptional Jillian is. Far more powerful than he had ever originally imagined. You see, back in Ghislain's previous life, when he first abandoned his home to begin his life as a mercenary, the legendary tales of Jillian were a major and significant influence in laying the very foundation for him to ultimately ascend to the rank of the mercenary king. Now, he is immensely grateful that his own swift actions have earned him such a powerful and reliable comrade. He then spies Jillian still clutching the dagger that Virgo was using. So he inquires of the big man if he knew that person. Jillian quickly confirms that he does, in fact, remember this person. He even admits that they were, at one time, old comrades in arms. The very mention of old comrades causes Ghislain to reflect upon the dear friends from his previous life. He finds himself wondering what they might be doing at this very moment, since he had not yet encountered them at this point in his past life. He is certain they are out there, living their own separate lives, but he vows to find them and recruit them into his party as well. In any case, now that the bloody conflict has been resolved, he decides to heed Belinda's earlier suggestion and to collect any valuables these dead men may have. The lady happily acknowledges his command and immediately orders Jillian to take the lead and gather them for her. But the brutish warrior reminds her that he is not, in fact, her subordinate. 2 days later, we find ourselves within the borders of Perdium territory. After many long and arduous days, our party has at last made it into their homeland. After riding for what has felt like an eternity, the brute asks if his desolate land is truly Perdium, to which our boy solemnly confirms. As Ghislain peers out at his territory from the carriage window, he feels a profound sense of relief to have a home to return to. When he first fled from his home all those years ago, he foolishly believed he would be able to return at any time. But he was so terribly, horribly wrong. He then turns to Jillian and asks for his honest opinion about this place. The brute is momentarily taken aback by this question and is clearly unsure of how he should respond. so he simply mutters that it's great. But our boy knows that this place is nothing short of awful, and as much as Jillian hates to admit it, it is, in fact, in a truly deplorable state. All of the houses are ancient and dilapidated. Any hope of renovations is out of the question. And the once fertile fields are completely uncultivated. All of the farmers have been forcibly conscripted into the military, leaving the precious land to lie fallow and barren. Jillian then reveals the rumors he has heard. That Perdium is perpetually at war due to the northern barbarians. But after witnessing it with his own eyes, the grim reality is far worse than Jillian could have ever expected, to which my guy declares that this is but one of the many grave problems he intends to resolve. And this is precisely why he requires the fearsome strength of the Ratatas. Mercenary's captain. He knows that it will be a long and brutal battle, a war to completely eradicate everything connected to Duke Delphine and to protect what was once taken for granted. Our boy will resurrect this fallen land no matter what it takes. As they finally make their way along the pavement leading to the castle, Belinda is completely shocked when she notices an unexpected figure in their path. The man standing before them is, in fact, our boy's own father.